It's now just 6:31, so why don't we get started and call the meeting to order? Okay, Madam City Clerk, can you go ahead and do a roll call, please?
John Caposcia, Mayor.
Here.
Jean Goss, Mayor Pro Tem.
Here.
Council members Rachel Arizmendi.
Present.
Denise Delmar.
Present.
And John Harabidian.
Here.
Okay, Council Member Arizmendi will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
If you can all please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I just wanted to share a little something about this month. This month is Filipino American History Month, and earlier this month I was invited to the White House along with 175 other Filipino leaders across the country, and we commemorated this month and to really highlight and celebrate the rich history, heritage, and culture of the bond of Filipino Americans as it relates to the American history also. And many of you know that I am a first generation born here, Filipino, and I was really honored to be at the White House on October 2nd. And I just wanted to share with you what the President had shared with us on that day. I'm honored to join in marking Filipino American History Month and in reflecting on the struggles and victories of the many Filipino Americans who have helped shape our nation. Generations of Filipino Americans have lent their unique voices to the vibrant diversity of origins, cultures, and communities that make America what it is. This legacy speaks to the extraordinary spirit of common purpose, of unity forged through the ideals that bind us together as one people, that has always been central to our nation. This month, we honor the Filipino Americans who have worked to build and defend our country and reflect on moments that have changed the course of the American story. 70 years ago, not only the Pacific, but the entire world, a victory made possible in part by thousands of Filipino Americans who fought for our nation, but who, for far too long, were denied the compensation they had earned. 50 years ago, courageous farm workers in Delano helped bring about progress that would forever change the labor movement, both within the Filipino American community and for our country as a whole. And in the decades that have followed, Filipino American citizens have helped expand our nation's promise throughout every aspect of our society. As you come together to celebrate the extraordinary ways Filipino Americans have contributed to our country, you have my warmest regards. President Barack Obama.
Nice. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Arizmendi. Okay. All right, approval of the agenda. Any suggested changes to the agenda? If not, can we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, not opposed. Okay, Mayor and City Council reports. Who'd like to go first?
Mayor.
Oh, approval of minutes. Okay, sorry. Minutes. Fine with me. Any
Likewise.
changes?
I have a quick one on October 13th, page 21. Down it says a special assessment will. It should not read will. It should read may.
Thank you.
Any other changes?
I'll move to approve said changes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, none opposed. Okay, now Mayor and City Council reports. Would you like me to go first this time? I never go
Please
first.
do.
Okay. First of all, I had the pleasure of judging the Halloween painting contest. A lot of fun. We had really big turnout. So I really just want to give thanks to the Civic Club because they organized that whole thing and they just did a wonderful job and the participation was phenomenal. And, you know, what would we do without the great volunteers that they have? I mean, these community events that really cost the city nothing and is run by the volunteers are just fabulous. I also want to just thank the Civic Club from the bottom of my heart that they paid for the trimming of the wisteria in our gazebo here. And once again, didn't cost the city anything. It needed to be done. It was so overgrown. And again, what a great treasure that we have an organization like that serving Sierra Madre. I also just want to say that I did attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors conference about 2 weeks ago, and it was really good. Grace Napolitano was there, so she gave us some practical advice on how maybe we should approach our stormwater problem. So, but it was just good to hear from her. I feel like she understands the dilemma that cities are in to pay for this thing. And we also, what was interesting is we had U.S. EPA Director of District 9 there. And after all was said and done, I thanked him for exposing himself to such hostile attacks, because the mayors are just really, those that are aware of our stormwater predicament are very, very upset, because all of us are in the same boat. We really put it on our citizens. We committed you guys to pay about $20 million to comply with the stormwater regulations. And this, if this sounds like a surprise, you just weren't listening when I did mention this before, but the council all voted to do that. And basically what we're doing is putting our cities on a path to bankruptcy, because there, in my mind, there is just no way the voters are ever going to approve such a radical cost to implement the stormwater tax. So anyway, I think there is a window of opportunity. He did agree that he would meet with some of us offline in a more give and take session, so I see that as a positive sign. Also, the U.S. Conference of Mayors was circulating a letter to our senators and representatives asking that we consider the cost of these kinds of initiatives before they are mandated upon us. So I did sign that letter, and I'm going to just pass it along to you. If you would like a copy, just ask staff to make a copy for you. But I thought this was a really good thing to ask of our representatives, to try to make this happen so that we can implement this on a timely, affordable schedule rather than what was pretty much rammed down our throats. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox and turn it over to the rest of you for your reports.
I have no report at this time.
I just have a couple things. I attended a neighborhood watch meeting a couple nights ago, and I found it very interesting. First of all, the officers did an awesome job. They were talking about some of our daytime burglaries that we have, and neighbors are hearing breaking glass, or they're hearing something suspicious next door, and they're encouraging people, when you know that your neighbors aren't home and you do hear something, to go ahead and dial the 355-1414 number, and they'll send somebody out to check. And really, they would prefer that to be nothing than it actually be something. So I just wanted to pass that along. And also, we had our library proposal subcommittee on October 20th, and everybody did a lot of work. We heard from two of our vendors, the county proposal and the LSSI proposal. It was very enlightening for all of us on the subcommittee. We had a large turnout from the audience, and we are going to be bringing back our report, I believe, the 24th of November.
I have nothing.
Just briefly, the Sheriff's Contract Proposal Committee had its final meeting last night. It was a long meeting, and it was very well attended. As a matter of fact, it was standing room only, spilling out into the lobby. We had just an incredible amount of participation. It was a very productive meeting, and that will be the first thing on our agenda item tonight. I can see the chair and members of the committee are here, so I'll save my remarks on that, but I just wanted to thank the public for showing up. It really made a big impression on all of us.
Okay. Is that everybody? Okay. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up for public comment for items not on the agenda, and anticipating that we're going to have a lot of public comment when we discuss the sheriff department proposal. I'm going to ask that we implement the 3-minute rule and ask you all to keep your comments. To keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And when you do come to the podium, please state your name clearly so that we can get it on record and for our city clerk here. So with that, I'll open it up for items not on the agenda, discussion on items not on the agenda. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Jim Osterling. Those of us who attend the Sierra Madre 4th of July parade might believe that our local city college is Sierra Madre City College. In fact, it's Pasadena City College. My name is Jim Osterling, and I'm running for the Board of Trustees for PCC, and I'm here to personally thank everybody in Sierra Madre for a huge outpouring of support, endorsements, lawn signs, contributions, and countless volunteer hours. I will ask one more thing of all of you, and that is remember to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd for the Pasadena City College Board of Trustees election. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Osterling. Okay, anybody else care to comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, with that, I'll close or you want to speak? Okay. Just in time.
My name is Phil Cannon, and I live on Edgeview in Sierra Madre. I have a question. I came across some interesting information related to revenues for the city, and I remember at the last city council meeting, Mrs. Delmar made a remark that even if we pass a UUT to 8% or 10% in April, we'd still need, I think it was said pretty close to this, we'd still need additional sources of revenue. I think those are the words I heard. And I came across a piece of information that I'd like to ask you about. Is it true that if a home is built, the city gets somewhere in the neighborhood of $45,000? Is that true?
Those, I'll answer your question. Those are development impact fees. Those monies are sequestered. They do not go into the general fund. They are used to pay for the impact of the additional use of infrastructure. Okay, and now is not the time to debate, but I appreciate you. If you have a concern or a comment, let us know.
I probably within my 3 minutes, is it
Still good, yeah.
okay? Is it also true that right now there's a lawsuit related to the Planning Commission's okay of one piece of property being developed at One Carter, and the Planning Commission passed on it, and then the City Council said, no, we're not going to do that, and so now there's a lawsuit?
The short answer is yes.
Thanks, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Okay, any other comments for items not on the agenda? Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. And first thing, we have a presentation from Assembly Member Chris Holden. He's going to give us his annual address. Welcome, Assembly Member Holden, and thank you for taking the time to come.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's always a pleasure to come before the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre. This is an opportunity for us to kind of give you an update on the activities in Sacramento, an update on the 2015 legislative session. This year, we will focus on budget and economy, education, key legislation, drought challenges, and transportation. I'd like to share some of the highlights of this year's state budget. $18.2 billion will be provided for Medi-Cal, which includes funding for treatment and services specifically designed for people with autism. The budget also enacts a California Earned Income Tax Credit to lift working families out of poverty. In regards to public safety, this budget authorizes up to $6 million for programs and initiatives intended to strengthen relationships between the law enforcement and the communities they serve. Also, this budget provides $19 million in additional funding for recidivism reduction and ex-offender training, career training. I'm pleased to share with you all that the state was able to increase funding in every level of public education. This year's state budget allocates $68.4 billion to K through 12 school system, which includes $12 billion more than last year. An additional $600 million will be allocated for our state's community college system. This budget will also increase the California State University budget by $97 million, the University of California budget by $25 million, contingent on increasing opportunities for in-state students. During this year's legislative session, I introduced several bills to address gaps in our educational system. Assembly Bill 220, Algebra Requirement Reform. This bill updates the Algebra 1 high school graduation requirements by removing an outdated reference to the 1997 mathematics standards and ensures students meet the mathematics high school graduation requirements. Assembly Bill 288, Concurrent Enrollment. This piece of legislation was introduced this year for the second time and was the priority bill for my legislative package. This bill expands access to concurrent enrollment opportunities for high school students. It authorizes California community college districts to enter into formal partnership agreements with local school districts to allow high school students to take college-level courses at a community college or at high school campuses. These bills were both signed by the governor. I was fortunate to have carried 14 bills that have been passed through the legislature and have reached the governor's desk, and I'd like to highlight a few of those bills with you this evening. Assembly Bill 15, Human Rights. This bill ensures justice for victims of human rights abuses by expanding the statute of limitation on these cases to 10 years from the current 2. Assembly Bill 265, Buy Here, Pay Here auto loans. This bill provides used car buyers additional protection by requiring Buy Here, Pay Here dealerships to give an additional 10-day written notice before using a starter interruption device to disable a vehicle. Assembly Bill 525, Franchise Bill of Rights. This is a landmark bill to protect the investment of small business franchisees by strengthening their legal rights in their dealing with corporate owners. The bill ensures franchisees can operate their businesses, transfer the franchise to qualified heirs, and renew their contracts. Both of these bills were signed by the governor. Drought. Statewide, there has been $1.9 billion spent on conservation, emergency supplies, and infrastructure since Governor Brown declared a drought emergency last year. $472.5 million in local grants for regional and community-based projects, including stormwater capture and groundwater infiltration. $268 million in grants in local water recycling facilities. My office held an informational session earlier this year on the drought emergency at Kidspace Museum. There's exciting momentum afoot that will bring change to the Foothill communities. The Gold Line Foothill Extension is a vital link in optimizing the connectivity of our region's economic engine. Freight from the ports travel between cities to facilitate job growth and consumer activity, and ultimately air travel. We recently marked important milestones in the effort to bring transit options to the San Gabriel Valley. The Metro Operations Campus in Monrovia is on track to create nearly 200 jobs. 6 Gold Line Foothill Extension stations are complete. The Foothill Extension now reaches Azusa, and LA Metro will begin customer service on the line in 2016. My priority is to work in collaboration with LA Metro and the Gold Line Foothill Extension Construction Authority to identify resources to complete the Foothill Extension to Claremont and someday to the Ontario Airport. A proposed new bond measure for the November 2016 ballot is a promising start. New challenges and new technologies are changing how we look at creating and maintaining our transportation infrastructure. To explore some of these challenges, 2 weeks ago, I convened the Select Committee on Regional Transportation and Interconnectivity Solutions, which I chair. Policy and technology experts testified. Caltrans described the deferred maintenance needs of the state's infrastructure. In a special session on transportation, the governor has proposed additional spending that places Fix It First as a priority, then follows those dollars with targeted investments that sustain the state's economy, such as investments in trade corridors. We cannot pave our way out of congestion. We continue to look at ways that move people under their own power, walking and biking as examples. The state's needs are great, and costs will only increase the longer we put off decisions to identify funding solutions. As I said at the beginning, it's a pleasure to be able to represent the city of Sierra Madre. I'm certainly represented extremely well by my district director, Kayleen Maya Aviles, and my field representative, Alex Zuko. We look forward to continuing to work in partnership with the city of Sierra Madre, and we're happy to entertain any questions you might have at this point.
Okay, questions for Assemblymember Holden?
I'd just like to say thank you again for coming and taking the time out of your schedule to visit us at City Council. I think it's something that didn't happen in the past, and it's really refreshing to hear about what's going on and throughout the state and up in Sacramento and how you're helping with that. So thanks again for coming. It's always educational.
I do have a question. I mean, you mentioned our transportation woes, that we just can't seem to find enough money. What can be done? I mean, I see what you're saying. We want to push more to other means of transportation, but how likely is this to actually happen? I mean, our roads need repairing. As soon as a new segment of freeway is built, it's already bumper to bumper for, 18 hours of the day.
Right.
So how do we move past this and, really get moving? I mean, just great news that Ontario Airport is turned over to local control again. I think that's fantastic. The goal line opening up. Do you think we're going to be able to finally get a transit system that actually goes to an international airport? I mean, it just seems like we're right there now. What can we do to make that happen?
We are right there, and I strongly believe that, well, first of all, with the leadership of the city council, you as mayor and other mayors that have served here, and the council, other city councils and leadership throughout the San Gabriel Valley has continued to put the needs of the San Gabriel Valley first and foremost in front of the LA Metro Board. And, as we know, we went down this path, not we, but there was an effort down in the past to try to find a bond measure that could go forward. The last bond measure did not have success, primarily because it was not clear in how the funding was going to be allocated to the gold line. This time around, we had a regional meeting last summer with Mayor Garcetti. He came out to the city of Claremont and made it very clear how much he supports the gold line, its value in terms of its interconnectivity. And I think we have a great deal of momentum that's making its way to the LA Metro Board, and I do believe we'll see on the ballot. Matter of fact, they had a really very high-profile news conference last week to put emphasis on the fact that the gold line is making its way to Azusa, and it wouldn't make sense to talk about Azusa without understanding that that's not the end point.
Yeah.
So I'm enthusiastic about our chances, and I do believe that, and we're also working with the city or the county of San Bernardino so that they can become have investment in what's getting ready to make its way to their borders.
Okay, now can we keep the 710 tunnel out of that funding? Because I think that's going to kill it, the whole thing. It's so controversial.
Right. Well, I don't know if there are any. I don't know whether or not that project is going to have any money allocated in this round, in this particular measure. I don't know that. I know that Metro is looking for priority projects from the COG, and I know that there is an interest to really see a number of projects move forward. Gold Line right at the top of the list, but I have not heard that funding is being requested for the 710.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just to clarify, the COG actually removed the 710 from our priority project.
really?
So, yeah, the COG isn't.
Good news.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens ultimately.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
I just want to thank you for getting that bill, is it 288 to pass, the concurrent enrollment. It's been a long time coming. I know when I was in education 10, 15 years ago, we were trying to get that passed, so thank you finally. It's really going to help the students and our college system as well. Thank you.
Very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, and for all you out there, I mean, Assemblymember Holden does have a very responsive staff. Any concerns you have, please contact him. I think government works best when it hears from its constituents, so it doesn't always have to be all about Sierra Madre here, you know, so.
Even though it's all about Sierra.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right, well, thank you, Member Holden. Okay. Okay, our Community Services Department Annual Report.
Yes, this is going to be presented by Danny Collins, the Community Services Manager. As you're aware, we have begun each department providing an annual report for information for the council and also the public.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council members. My name is Danny Collins, and I am the Community Services Manager. And tonight, I'm going to present the Community Services, I'm sorry? Oh. Is that better? Okay. Tonight, I'm going to present the Community Services Annual Review. The mission of the Sierra Madre Community Services Department is to provide safe facilities, quality services, and programs that are affordable, open, and friendly to enrich the overall quality of life for all visitors and residents. So here's a snapshot, an overview of the Community Services Department's responsibilities. Here's the organizational chart for fiscal year 2014-15. As you know, the rec supervisor position has been frozen. What this department has achieved over the past year is really a testament to the staff and countless volunteer hours that it took to continue the programs and services that are offered. While it's been a challenge and things aren't getting accomplished probably as quickly as we would like, we're still very proud of everything we have done and everything that we see to do in the future. Here's our board. We are the liaison to the Community Services Commission and the Senior Community Commission. I know up here right now it shows 4 areas, but the special event committees, there are multiple. So with that, and the Arts Advisory Board, the Waterworks Advisory Board, and the Senior Master Plan Committee, we are working with a lot of committees these days. Here is some pictures showcasing some of our accomplishments, which I will be going over. So this is our department activity for fiscal year 2014-15. And one thing that I really want to note on this slide is that really there's only one thing on here that volunteers don't have a part of. Other than that, everything that you see on here is a collaboration between staff and volunteers. And again, I can't stress enough how important that is to have the volunteers that we do. That's a big list. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of programs. And it's great to see the amount of volunteers that we have. So some of the accomplishments that I want to point out, I won't go through every bullet point, but some of them I really want to point out is the addendum to the YMCA agreement. And we expanded enrichment programs and fitness-based programming at the recreation center. So that's been a great thing. In addition, there's been expanded programming at the senior center. Those include some memory enhancement, case management, technology education, dance classes, and monthly special activities. We also, this past summer, partnered with the Downtown Repertory Theater to provide Shakespeare in the Park. I wasn't here, but from what I heard, it was excellent, got great reviews, and the Downtown Repertory Theater was great to work with. And so we're really excited about that opportunity again next year. One thing that I personally love seeing is the title sponsors for the 4th of July, because that means that they don't have to pay anything to be in the parade. That just brings in more participants. Moving on, we have, the City Council approved for the Hart Park House to go out to bid for the storage room, so that you will see that coming up. In addition, there's been new park signage at Memorial Park and Hart Park House Senior Center. And then we partnered with Athens Services, and finally they identified all the locations in the dog waste stations for all city parks. Partnered with the Rotary Club this year for the first ever World Water Day. And that event really focused on conservation and education on water resources. So that's been great, and we look forward to keeping that going in the future years. This one, the sponsorship level for the Concert in the Park series was really big. It just increased the actual amount of concerts, so everybody got to enjoy that many more times out at the park with family and friends, enjoying some music and picnicking. In addition, the aquatics lease for the aquatic center brings in about $72,000 per year. However, with our agreement with Waterworks, a sizable amount of that goes back into improving the aging infrastructure at the aquatic center. So moving on to future goals. Some things that we'd like to see come up is begin the update of the youth master plan. We won't be able to get to that until we've completed the update of the senior master plan. The pole replastering that actually you will see come back to the city council, that notice of completion in November. And then the YMCA lease to increase overall programming will be bringing in ultimately about $36,000 annually. Some of the operational highlights I know that I've already mentioned, so I'll focus on transferring responsibility of transportation services to the Public Works Department. Actually happened July 1st. And we are maintaining our department staff organization right now and keeping where we're at. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Danny, for your presentation, Community Services Manager Danny. Considering for the short period of time you've been here, you seem to know it very well, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the waterworks. I know during one of the previous reports that there were challenges finding people to serve on the advisory committee. I just wanted to find out if we've been able to secure any volunteers for that committee.
I'll actually refer to Alyssa on that. I'm not sure.
No, we still have not found any volunteers. We've put it out. I think we just spoke about it at a meeting or two ago, and we have included it in our listing of activities looking for volunteers. Have had no nibbles.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I appreciate your acknowledgement of the volunteers again, because if you look at the staff, the chart that you put up there, I mean, look at the list of all the things that they manage with just a couple of people. You know, it's really incredible. And again, thanks to all the volunteers. It really defines what we are all about here in Sierra Madre. So
It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
I said it from the first day I got here, and it just continues.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we at now? We're on to the consent calendar. Madam
Mayor.
City Manager?
Mayor, members of City Council, there are 4 items on the consent calendar. Have a change to the recommendation on D, and I'll explain it when I get down there. At 1A is adoption of Resolution 1563, approving our demands. At 1B is award of a professional services contract to SA Associates in an amount not to exceed $22,000 for preparation of the city's 2015 Urban Water Management Plan. There are adequate funds in the Water Department budget. The council does not need to appropriate funding to complete that plan. 1C is just notifying the council of staff's intent to return the OES engine 208 to the state of California due to a lack of staffing, to be able to staff that rig when it's called into service. And 1D, the recommendation is, the title is correct. It's it's Resolution 1564, approving the application for grant funds for the Los Angeles Regional Park and Open Space District for 5th Supervisory District Proposition A funding for the Civic Center landscaping project, and approving the adoption of a youth employment plan. The recommendation included the and youth sports leagues. If you would cross that off, because that is incorrect, you are only approving the grant application for the Civic Center landscaping project only. That concludes staff's presentation. We'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. All right, start with the warrants. Any questions on item A? Okay, how about city's urban water management plan? That's just a must-do. We have to do that.
You have to do it.
Okay, intent to return OES engine 281 to the state of California. Questions about that?
Miss seeing it,
Yeah.
you know? But
Okay, and other questions about our grant application?
Can I go back to 1B for a minute?
Sure.
What do you mean by a must-do? What would happen if we didn't do it?
Director Inman in the
I'm not
audience?
trying to be frivolous, I kind of want to make a point.
Mhm.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. In regards to the Urban Water Management Plan, this is a document that is required of the city as a water supplier that needs to be renewed, redone every 5 years. If we do not do that document, although the state doesn't take enforcement action, we would be subject to third-party lawsuits, and we would be ineligible for any state funding relative to water projects, should we apply for state funding.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, other questions? Okay, open it up for public comment. Any comments on the consent calendar? And again, state your name clearly for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, thanks. Barbie Lee Klein, 2 questions on, there's a B and D. On B, for the awarding of the contract for the Urban Water Management Plan, will this also include any new types of development that the city will see in the next 5 years? Okay, pause. Now on D, I think, Elaine, you said to strike the Project Youth Sports League, because my question was going to be geared towards the field at Sierra Madre Middle School. If that's still included, then I'd like to know how much money the Pasadena Unified School District will provide for the improvement of that field also. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. I'm not sure, do you understand the first question?
Perhaps Director Inman does.
New development?
Yes, I believe that the question is in reference to the Urban Water Management Plan and whether or not it includes any references to future development, and yes, it does. It does include a section where growth projections are included in the study. And basically, it's one of the things that the Urban Water Management Plan does is talk about the amount of water that will be available for future development.
And that forecast is made, what, after consulting the general plan we just approved?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. And the other question was, I think we already answered it before it was asked.
It's not
but-
part of
yeah.
this evening.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so, all right, any other comments or discussion on the consent calendar?
Just a quick one, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's useful or not, but in item B, you see an example of something that, and as a political science professor for years, I thought I understood academically, but after I've sat on this council for a year and a half, I understand just how much higher levels of government require city governments to perform things that we might not perform otherwise and have to pay for with our taxpayers' dollars. And I think sometimes the public doesn't quite understand that. So I think sometimes they think that everything we're spending our money on are things that are generated by our public here to meet our needs here. And I just want you to know that we're signing off on a lot of these $10, $22, $50,000 outlays all the time. And when we talk about our budget, and I think we need to put all that into context to really have a full picture of our financial health.
It's a great point, because I often get asked, why can't we be like we were in the 50s? And that's, we didn't have that requirement in the 50s, yeah. Okay, other comments? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the one change that was proposed?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I do have to say aye with the exception of invoice INV017290, as that is made out to me from my league conference.
It's okay, you can vote for it. You earned it.
Okay. All right, it passes unanimously with that one little recusal. Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay, now, items for discussion. First thing on the agenda is a recommendation from the Sheriff's Proposal Committee and continued discussion regarding the user or utility users tax measure for the April 12th municipal election. Okay.
Mayor, members of the City Council, at your the most recent meeting, you provided staff with direction regarding the preparation of an ordinance that would go before the voters in April 2016. The city attorney has prepared a draft of that ordinance. It is in your packet for the council to review and make modifications should you choose to do so. Should the council end up with a version of the ordinance that they are comfortable putting on the ballot, the next step would be sometime depending November, December at the latest, staff would return with all of the election-related resolutions to actually call for the election, obtain services from the county register recorders, put measures on the ballot. So that would be the next step in this process. The second part of this is the City Council did ask for the Sheriff's Contract Review Committee to return with a report on their recommendation. As you're aware, you created 3 special committees. One of them was a Revenue Committee, which you've already received a final report from. The second was the Sheriff's Contract Review Committee, which their report is on this agenda this evening. The third committee is the Library Committee. Their report should be on your agenda. Your second meeting in November is proposed deadline to complete their work. The report was completed by the committee late last night and was put on the city's website this morning. We provided copies for each of the council members here at Chairman of the committee, along with a number of committee members, are here this evening. The chair is prepared to present a summary of the committee's findings should the council desire to do so. That concludes staff's presentation, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Okay.
I would like the committee to be announced, the people that are here, for their recognition for the time they spent.
Okay. Who shall do that? You want the chairperson to? Okay. Okay, so former Mayor Lambden, if you'd like to give us an overview, and per council members Delmar's request, can you acknowledge the folks on the committee that worked with you?
Let me see who's here. Bill Colburn.
Bill, could you just wave and just, okay,
Dan
thanks.
Handley.
Don Hanley, okay.
I apologize if I don't see anybody else.
Marilyn?
Oh,
Marilyn
Chief
Diaz?
in the back.
Yes, okay.
Thank you all. Oh, who else? Oh.
And
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Yeah, what we did in a very short time was we tried to take the sheriff's proposal, break it apart, kind of dissect it as much as we could, and try to match apples with our existing police departments, with their staffing personnel and so forth. We took into account buyouts. If we were to go with the sheriff, what we would have to pay existing personnel. We took into account things, consumer price index, cost of living increases, and tried to just do long-term forecasting, short-term forecasting. The sheriff's proposal had 3 very basic elements to it, options, A, B, and C. C was not to use our existing facilities at all, and they would operate out of their Temple station. It would also reduce the personnel. B was to keep our station open 24/7 like we currently have it, with some very slight variations in personnel. And A was to keep our existing facilities open 16 hours, 7 days a week. So we took all of those into consideration, and with the help of the public, came to some conclusions. I think it's important to know that the majority of the public was very much in favor of keeping our police department. Response time was a big issue. While the financial side was also a big issue, the cultural aspects of how the existing police fit into our community and our way of life is contrasting the perception of how the sheriffs would be. So after going through that in the public hearings, we came to the conclusion that there are 4 elements in our budgeting that cannot be compromised: police, fire, water, and public works. The idea is that we do not, under any circumstance, underfund any of those while funding things that have a lower priority. With that said, we came to the conclusion that we would reject the sheriff's proposal and suggest and recommend that we keep our police department, that the city council does not underfund, actually don't decrease any of the funding that they currently have, and if and when the time comes where funds are available, to fund the police department to where they need to be, where they've been in the past. I also think it's important that there was another opinion that committee member Hanley had, who comes from a law enforcement background, and I'm sure he's going to speak tonight, so perhaps if, with your permission, if you could give him a little more than the 3 minutes, because I think he brings some valuable considerations to the discussion that needs to be had.
Yeah, just to make that perfectly clear, I don't view the committee members as general members of the public. I mean, we would like some interaction and questions back and forth, so, yeah, anybody on the committee. And
I'd like
yeah.
everybody available.
Exactly,
If you could,
yeah.
please. And we're all available for questions, too.
Yes, great, thank you. Okay, Mr. Hanley or?
Thank you for...
If I can I comment? I'd like to comment once, and, you know, I appreciate, again, what Mayor Lambden said about this is somewhat emotional, and appreciate the applause, but what I really would like to do here is to get a very good dialogue back and forth. I'm going to try to play the devil's advocate and ask maybe some tough questions about why we should not go with the sheriff's department. And I think it's important for all citizens, you in the audience and those that are watching on TV and others as we go forward and disseminate information, that they get a really unvarnished, unbiased view with the facts. So I just want to be careful that, you know, I appreciate the applause, but I want to be sure that those who support the sheriff also feel that they can come to the podium and express their mind without being shouted down or, you know, made to feel like they are un-Sierra Madre-like. Okay, and I really believe this is really important. I mean, we are really kind of at a crossroads here in Sierra Madre, and we want to make sure we're making the right decision and that we are informed as we form our views on this. So with that, I really want to hear what you've got to say about it, Mr. Hanley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the time that my wife and I moved to Sierra Madre a bit over 4 years ago, there's been a continuing discussion about the need to raise revenue for the city. There have been 2 attempts in the recent past to modify the utility user tax that was enacted some years back. Both times the voters said no. That tax is scheduled to go down to a permanent rate of 6% next July, creating what is projected to be a funding shortage of around $1 million in the next fiscal year. That shortage, of course, is based on maintaining the status quo. But that status quo, to put it simply, is a city that is being held together by baling wire and duct tape. We have streets and sidewalks that are crumbling around us and a water utility that is rotting away as we speak. Raising more tax revenue to simply keep this situation in place is short-sighted. You are now dealing with decades of councils that came before you who looked only at issues of the day and not to the future. Each one of you, at some point during your campaigns for election to this council, said you were the one who is ready to make the tough decisions to get things right. By only increasing revenue, you aren't making any decisions, much less tough ones. You are doing nothing more than kicking the can down the proverbial road, provided you can find a road in good enough condition. Without addressing things on the spending side, all of the doomsday discussions and committees that have been taking place these past few months will be necessary again. The 10% UUT you will try to get will still result in a $300,000 deficit in 2 years. Then you or your successors will be trying to decide whether to ask for 15% or 18%, and so it goes. Taxes are like closet space, there's never enough. The city is a municipal corporation and you are its board of directors. You have a responsibility to be as prudent as possible when deciding how to spend the money that residents provide to you. Simply raising revenue is not a viable solution, particularly when seeing that the city was designed such that the major source of revenue normally available to municipalities, the sales tax, is minimal. The city was developed with little room for business. You will need to fundamentally change the way the city does things. You are required by law to provide public safety services, although the means by which you do it is at local discretion. But there is no requirement to own, operate, and maintain your own utilities, library, or even parks. As an example of what I'm talking about, I volunteered as a member of the Public Safety Committee, which was expanded during the summer to conduct a review of a proposal from the Sheriff's Department to provide law enforcement services to Sierra Madre. The last 2 meetings were in front of a full house, packed with people who couldn't say enough about how they love their police department and how awful it would be to contract with the LASD. Most of what was said made it seem as though the police department is viewed more as a social club than a law enforcement agency. It was apparent to me from the outset of the review process that the committee was predisposed to recommend keeping the police department. If that is the decision that this council makes, it should be made with the full knowledge of just how thin the resources in the department are being stretched. We learned, excuse me, that there are times when the chief of police has had to respond 20 miles from home to handle calls for service because no one is available. I'm here to tell you that this isn't the 1950s, and this isn't Mayberry. To have to wait for someone, much less the chief, to drive 20 miles from home to provide service is not effective public safety, and I speak from 32 years of experience in law enforcement. The police department's own deployment information that was provided to the Sheriff's Department for comparison purposes shows that for 12 hours of each and every day, there is only 1 police officer scheduled for deployment in the field. Our review determined that under a contract with the LASD, we never would have less than 2 deputies deployed in the field 24/7, with 3 during the traditionally busier evening hours, the current 24-hour presence in the police station, and that for $300,000 less than the existing budget. And because of presumably lower salaries here, making recruiting new officers difficult at best, you would need to budget more just to keep the precarious status quo as more and more officers look elsewhere. Keeping your own police department is your decision to make. It seems from public sentiment that there is no limit to how much the city may spend to keep its own PD. You will need to spend more to keep what you have, to stem the exodus. Spend a lot more to make it realistic, or spend less to get more. It is only a matter of time before the prison realignment and Prop 47 folks get wind of what the policing situation really is in Sierra Madre, before things get uncomfortable and out of hand. And we may be starting to see that already with the upward trend in burglaries. But you are going to have to make those tough decisions you all promised and figure out how to keep the city afloat. It will take more than raising taxes to do it. You all know full well that as the city as it conducts its business today is not sustainable over the long term. The fact that there is a utility tax in the first place shows that you are doing things you can't afford. The fact that the increase you seek puts you back in the red just 2 years from now reinforces that. You have the opportunity to get Sierra Madre on sound fiscal ground, but it will require some unpopular but necessary changes. It will require those tough decisions.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the other members of the committee like to make comments?
Marilyn Diaz, Toyon Road. Good evening. Mayor, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this committee. It was an honor, and I really have to acknowledge, as you did earlier, the hard work and dedication of each and every member, particularly our chair, Glenn Lambden. Mr. Hanley said some of what I wanted to bring up, but I want to add something else. Well, first of all, I wanted to emphasize that if the council chooses to retain the police department, it is essential to make sure that the department is funded not only at its current rate, but that you look to funding it so that there is enough, there are sufficient funds to provide raises because of the difficulty in attracting, recruiting, and retaining officers. All departments are facing that, particularly Sierra Madre, because we are the lowest paid. And I think we, by the nature of our city, we will continue to be the lowest paid, but we can't let too great a gap occur and expect to get quality people. That's going to be a big challenge. This is an expensive proposition. And what no one has talked about yet, our committee was focused exclusively on the police department. We haven't talked about the fire department. Our community culture has changed. And the agency that was once formed by many volunteers is not the same. It is increasingly more difficult to get full-time or to get volunteers for the fire department. And that department has been slowly changing to paid employees, and it will continue to change. We already got an assessment from the county for nearly $4 million to contract for fire services. Obviously, that's too expensive for us at this point. But what I'm saying is, actually echoing part of what Mr. Hanley said, is this is a very expensive, long-term problem. And even if we were to raise the UUT to 12%, that might take care of the police department, although 12% might seem exorbitant to you, but we still have the fire department and our other infrastructure to deal with. So this is a very difficult situation, but I just want to emphasize that if we do go with the police department, I hope you consider it essential that we have a cushion there. If that can't be accommodated, then I would suggest that we reconsider the sheriff's department, one of the sheriff department's proposals, which the 1C where we don't have anybody stationed in our department would be the most fiscally prudent, although it wouldn't be desirable to me as a resident. It's just a very tough decision that is facing you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's see. Mr. Coburn, would you care to comment?
I guess I have to agree with the other members of the committee that this was a very difficult situation to be looking into. One of the things that concerned me when we got into the public comment at the first meeting where we actually had a lot of people show up, one of the residents said that we needed to be concerned about unintended consequences. And by that they were saying if the people in this town don't feel that they're safe because they don't feel good about the sheriff's department, they're liable to arm themselves. And one person who was at the meeting stood up and said, yep, that's the case, I'll be doing that. So it is a difficult thing. There are things that go into this far beyond the financial aspect of things. One of the reasons that I voted the way that I did was that, you know, you came to us with the idea that we're looking at $1 million shortfall. And when we looked at the HR side of things and paying off vacations and paying off for retirement and things like that, we're looking at an additional $400,000 just to deal with that. And if we're already short the $1 million, now we're adding another $400,000. Another thing that was a major factor for me was the cost to reinstate the police department if we get rid of the police department was estimated, if I remember correctly, somewhere between $6 and $7 million. And we're having trouble funding the $3.9 million for the existing department. If we went with the sheriff's department and we weren't happy with it, our only option, since we obviously aren't going to come up with $6 to $7 million, would be to try and find somebody else that we could contract with. Arcadia and Pasadena have already passed on providing us with a bid, and they might change their mind if we decided, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to contract out. They might not. So I just was concerned with leaving the city with no real options. So that's part of the reason that I went the way that I did. I think Glenn stated it very well, that, you know, you do have a responsibility to do public works, water department, fire department, and most importantly, police department.
Yeah.
And anything else comes after that. So I hope you'll keep that in mind. You know, I mean, obviously we don't want to get rid of all the other things that are going on in town, but we need to be safe and we need to make sure our houses aren't going to burn down. We need to have water. So those are my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Does anybody on the council have questions for any of the committee members?
I do. And I'm not sure who can answer. These are just some basic questions about sheriff's proposal, and I have a few of them that shouldn't be too difficult to answer. But I think Mr. Hanley had mentioned that we would, under, I believe, Plan B, have 2 sheriff deputies deployed at all times, and whoever wants to answer this can. Can you explain a little bit more about the mechanics of that? Would we have 2 deputies inside city limits at all times, or would they be stationed somewhere in Temple City, you know, out of the Temple City station, and they could be shared with surrounding cities?
No, the proposal that the Sheriff's Department has as contracts with any of the contract cities, the deputies that are paid for by the city work in the city. And in the case of the proposal, using the police facility here, those deputies that the city of Sierra Madre contracts for would operate out of that building, just like the police department does now.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the figure was a $400,000 buyout provision, or that's how much it would cost to essentially pay for vacation. Is that pension liabilities? Is, you know, what else goes?
The total is actually, I'm sorry. The total first year costs, the grand total is $321,000 estimated. The buyout of leave time is $394,000. A slight uptick in our unemployment insurance of only $2,000. The cost of the Phase 2 assessment from the Sheriff's Department, we estimated $25,000. And then we actually put in a contingency of $100,000 because you don't know what's going to happen. But that is offset, those costs are offset by selling surplus equipment. We came up with an estimate of $200,000 revenue coming in, which gives you the net amount of $321,000.
Okay.
If I may also, on, I suppose I should have mentioned it before. Proposal C, we threw it out. None of us were interested in not having a facility. Proposal B can be a little tricky to understand. With those buyout costs of $400,000, possibly $50,000 for Phase 2, and if you go into Proposal B, you don't realize any savings until year 7. However, to get to that point, you spend nearly $1.8 million over and above what it would cost to keep our current police department in there. So the first year, in year 7, you only realize a $39,000 savings. Get more and more, but your break-even point is somewhere around 15 years in Proposal B. Proposal A, you start to realize the savings. What's probably also important to realize is that there are other proposals that you could put together. You could do a hybrid. Basically what the sheriff said is it's almost a unit costing. You want 5 officers, you want this and that. It's all kind of plug it in and it's going to kick out a number. It's the same for every city. So we're not stuck to only the 3 proposals. You could kind of go, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost you $50,000 to find out. I'm not sure if you want to spend the money for that.
If I could add to that.
Please.
The phase 2.
Please stand at the podium so we can get it on the microphone for the record.
Phase 2 proposal that we would be asking for if we wanted to move on forward with the sheriff's department. Elaine had said $25,000. I believe that's the figure that Glenn was saying was $50,000 because it could be more than $25,000. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. But one of the factors that's going to be involved in the phase 2 is, are we capable of handling things the way the sheriffs do things? For instance, if our parking was determined to be inadequate for what the sheriff's standards are, we're then going to have to make sure that the parking is set up the way that it needs to be set up, and there would be negotiations that would have to take place to see how much that the city's paying for and how much the sheriff's paying for. Could be we don't pay anything, could be we pay for all of it.
We need the phase 2 to find that out, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask staff about former Mayor Lambden's, that we wouldn't save any money until year 15?
Is that, did you come to the same conclusion?
That those, he was quoting, there was a page that we could provide a copy. This
Yeah.
was provided to the committee, the meeting before the most recent one, where staff put together, working with the committee, the cost estimates of the different proposals, used inflation factors. We took it out 8 years. According to this spreadsheet, alternative A, the first year costs are always more because you're paying those initial first year get out of the current situation. But for proposal A, which is the partial closure of the station, you get savings estimated in year 2 of $280,000. Then it increases to $350, then $440. It keeps increasing as you go out, compared to our current department costs also inflated. So we made sure to make sure we inflated both.
I forgot to bring my spreadsheet. Can you?
We can make copies of this.
It'd be good to have that in front of us right now, because.
The proposal B, which is the open 24 hours a day one, that's the one that he's referring to, that there aren't savings until year 7.
Yeah.
And then.
So Plan B is year 7.
Correct.
Right.
And then the no facility, meaning the sheriff's department does not use our facility next year at all. There's a savings in year 1 of $70,000, year 2 of $560, year 3 of $646, increasing to $1 million by year 6-7.
So just a quick question on that. If we, we understand that Plan B would be a 15-year payback, but Plan A is a 1-year payback. In year 2, we more than make up in savings for what we spent to make the conversion, if I'm reading this correctly, right? Okay. So go ahead, Mr. Hanley.
I wanted to clarify something. Number one, I will reiterate that I and with the other committee members that we are not interested in having a proposal or a sheriff's contract that does not have this facility being used.
That's unanimous. Everybody
Yes.
felt that way.
No
Okay,
question
that's
about
helpful. Thank you.
When I spoke and I talked about a $300,000 savings, you have an A and a B proposal there. The savings that I was referring to are a hybrid of the field deployment indicated in proposal A with the station component that's part of Proposal B. So there's a couple of fluff things that they threw in, the field deployment in Proposal B that wouldn't really be necessary to still get more field resources than the police department has now.
Yeah.
And still saving $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
Minus whatever the first year startup costs are. And I don't know that, since this just came up last night, there was no way for them to calculate a going forward figure.
Okay.
But it's not just A or B.
Mm-hmm.
No, we came up with a A.5, A.5, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And one of the other things to keep in mind is that a lot of times there are incidents, and I brought it up when, okay, well, they had to call the chief, he had to come in to take a report or whatever. With a sheriff's contract, if things get busy, they get on the radio, and then there's more people here to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. They don't have to make any phone calls. They don't have to wait for somebody to come from home. There's people out there already.
Mm-hmm. Well, can I ask you a question on that, though? Isn't the shoe also on the other foot? I mean, these resources come from somebody else, so like if we get tied up here, resources from Altadena or Duarte would come over. But likewise, if they have problems, our resources that were stationed here in Sierra Madre would go over there too.
Yeah, that is always a possibility, but it would never be everybody that would go. And because of the way the Sheriff's Department manages the contracts, over the year's time, the city will always get the number of and it's done by minutes. The number of minutes that is contracted for, you will get it.
Okay, so
runs short a little bit at one point, you'll get more at another point.
So specifically on that point, I mean, again, it's, I mean, we've all got the proposal here. It does state what was mentioned before, that for most of the time, as you said, you'd have 2 cops on the beat, and during the afternoon hours into the evening, it'd be 3.
Yes.
Okay, so understanding that at some times, these will be pulled out to go visit maybe the higher crime areas in Duarte or Altadena. At the end of the year, do they account for that? And
well, yes, they do. And the chances of a Sierra Madre unit, a contract unit from Sierra Madre going over to Duarte is slim and none unless Duarte is under attack, because there are county units east of here that would go in there before they would from here.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right.
I've managed contracts at 2 different sheriff stations, and I know how it works.
Okay.
And it's a very tedious process for the person managing the contract, but it does work out.
Well, that leads into another question I have, is how does a contract city manage the contract? I mean, what resources would be required on our part if we were to go with the sheriff?
None. That's all handled by the sheriff's department, and it's a lot easier now because the activity of the units is all computerized now. When I was out there doing it, we had paper logs that we kept, and somebody else had to put it in, and then we would, if the city wanted to have some information about something, we'd have to call downtown, and they would run a report, and 3 or 4 days later it would come out. Now you can get it in seconds.
My question is more.
I was going to say more administrative. There isn't a need for a Sierra Madre staff person to worry about deployment, but you use Duarte for an example, you use other contract cities as an example. If you look at the spreadsheet that was passed out, the cities tend to have a position, a city position, that would be sort of the liaison between, to manage the contract. It would be the largest contract the city would have at over $2 million. There is normally a staff person who manages the day-to-day of the contract, handles the complaints. You can see on this, we've included in our estimates. It's an optional item, but to be fair, we did include it in our estimates. So there is a staff person. Somebody still needs to be assigned the responsibility of overseeing, especially the way we're organized, we oversee police and fire. There still needs to be somebody, a director over the activity.
Okay. All right, I still have more questions, but go ahead. I don't want to
I just have a couple. Did anybody from the community talk to our other contract cities and get their feedback on the sheriff response time and how the community liked having the sheriffs there? Do you know? Or
Well,
Mayor?
okay, what was your question?
Well, for the library subcommittee, you know, we went to some of the agencies, went to some of the cities that actually had the vendor from LSSI, and I was just wondering if you talked to anybody else, any other cities that had the sheriff as a contract.
I can't speak for the entire committee. I didn't, and,
Okay.
you know, it'd be preaching to the choir with me. So.
Can I just ask, Mr. Lambden and Mr. Coburn, would you mind just sitting in the front? And I'd like you guys to just jump in when a question is asked, just to make sure that we're getting all points of view on this, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, I want to be thorough here, and it might take a long time, but we really want to get best information as possible. Oh, yeah, Chief Diaz also. Sorry, didn't mean to overlook you. So, okay, so what other questions?
And, my other question was, I know I did, and I'm sure the other city council did as well. We received a lot of emails regarding response time. So from what I'm hearing tonight and reading in the proposal, there's always sheriff here in Sierra Madre.
Yes, apparently there's a perception by people that when you contract with the sheriff's department, they come from, you know, God knows where. The contract and one of the reasons why none of us are in favor of proposal C, which we actually asked them, it wasn't part of what they submitted originally, which would not use the facility here. We all want, if the contract is done, this facility would be part of it.
If we didn't have the station opened,
They would be operating out of Temple Station,
So
but
they
they
would be
would still
patrolling
be here.
Okay.
They would start their shift, they would drive up here,
do their
do their shift here, and then drive back to go home. So, but yes, they would stagger the shifts so that there was always somebody up here.
And is there a number that, like we have when we call the police, like I mentioned earlier, if we hear glass breaking and we don't know if it's an emergency and don't want to use 911, does the sheriff offer some sort of community number where people can call?
Well, they would probably use for that type, the regular number for the police department.
Okay.
They would probably use the same number here. But 911, from what I understand, the PSAP would be at Temple Station. So.
Okay, thank you.
You know, did seem to be a lot of concern from people that 911 would be operating out of Temple City. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that right now our 911 operates out of Verdugo.
Right.
So, you know, it's not like there's that big a change in that taking place.
Yeah. Can someone address just the public safety impact of option A versus B? And what that means, having a station closed for 8 hours at night. What difference does that make for us as far as public safety?
This may not be very likely, but it is a scenario that does happen. When I was chief, we had a couple of people, women, daughters and mothers, who felt that they were followed by somebody late at night, and they drove to the police station, which was what they were instructed to do. And Sierra Madre has a drive-up facility, so you can pull up right in front. We have cameras that look toward the street, well lit, and when they would approach the station, they would feel safe, go inside, stop, and that provided a great refuge or some solace or comfort to somebody that they know in the middle of the night, after 10 o'clock at night, you could go to the police station. There's always a secure place in the city. The fire department may or may not be staffed, but knowing that the police station is staffed 24 hours a day, or at least overnight, is a great comfort. I would also point out that on weekend nights, when there's a little more bar activity in the downtown area, having a police facility after 10 o'clock at night is convenient and quite useful at times.
But in the proposal, they talked about a blue light do you all know anything about the blue light that you would have at the police station after hours where you would kind of walk into a little kiosk and be able to access the blue light?
Yeah, that would be something to designate the location of a hotline that would pick up and talk to somebody at the sheriff's station in Temple City. That's what that is.
Are there any other aspects? I mean, I'm looking at that and just looking at the difference between options A and B, and it's pretty pricey. I mean, that's what, about $650,000 difference per year to keep that station open during those hours.
And even if the station isn't open, the police are still here, right? We
Well,
still have
police
patrol.
are on the beat, yeah.
But you're looking at the proposal A and B that was submitted, and proposal B has some additional field personnel in there that aren't necessary
I see.
to even exceed what we have now in the police department.
Yeah.
You know, they have a growth deputy, whatever that is, and another 40-hour deputy,
Yeah.
and an extra sergeant, which, you know, you take those out, you get back to the proposal A deployment in the field, but you still have the proposal B personnel in the station for 24-hour coverage.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's about
Okay.
a $300,000 difference.
I see. Okay. So once again, your point is these can be customized a little bit to
Yes.
meet our
Yes.
specific needs.
Tailored exactly the way you want it.
Go ahead.
Well, I just had a question regarding the special events, and it was really helpful to see the questions and answers from the Sheriff's Department. That was really beneficial. And it looks like they estimated about $200,000 for overtime budget for the special events that we have in town. When you did the calculations out, did you keep that a steady number? Did you increase with inflation?
It all
Is it projected out?
you inflated it straight across the board, same percentage.
Okay.
We just took the total and inflated it.
But to your point, I mean, that 200,000 is just an estimate.
Yeah.
My understanding is that if we do a phase two, then we'll make the long list of, as we
Events
saw
we
early.
actually-
And, you know, how much of that is staffed by sheriff, how much is by, volunteer? And we really don't know until we get that phase two. But that leads to another question that I have, and this is more of, not a hard question, it's maybe hard to answer, but how does that affect our volunteers that we have today? We've got a sizable force of volunteers that like this Halloween will be, up on Allegria Street, and is kind of an intangible thing, but if we go to the sheriff, do our volunteers feel differently about this now, and maybe we don't have as many volunteers? Okay, Chief Giannone?
Well, Mr. Hanley was going to ask that question last night of the Sheriff's Department, and I was able to get his answer this morning. Our volunteers would have to meet the criteria for the Sheriff's Department to be a volunteer.
Oh.
And then they could end up working back here, but if they choose not to go through that program, the volunteer program could be deleted, could be minimized, or we could get more if we have people that want it. But just like any other employee, they would have to go through the process to meet their qualifications to be a volunteer.
Do we feel that theirs are more stringent than what we have?
Yes.
They are, okay. So that's a risk to us there, yeah, okay.
What about the actual process? Would it be more cumbersome bureaucratically, or about the same, or easier?
I can only estimate or guess that it would be more bureaucratic. We have several of our ham operators that used to be sheriff volunteers that spoke at the community meetings that were not too impressed with their process and had some issues with them, and it actually stepped down and then became our volunteers. And some of them are here tonight if you want to ask their questions.
Rosemary's here, she's on the committee. Okay, I see Rosemary Burnett just arrived, another member of the committee. So the folks on the committee are sort of acting as a panel right now, so when we ask a question if we don't direct it to anybody specific, you may jump in and give the answer, or somebody else can, you know. Okay, I have another question about, you know, a mention was made, Chief Diaz, that we really need more resources to keep our department intact. So, I mean, I get emails from time to time that we should, you know, we've got to find a way to cut. We want to keep our police department, but we spend too much. We need to cut them more. So I'd like somebody to comment on that, because you guys have looked at the line item expense numbers, and I'd like somebody to, you know, expound on that a little bit about what it really takes to keep a viable police department in this town. So Chief Diaz, if you want to comment on that.
Well, the committee's recommendation last night was to ensure that if the council chooses to retain the department as we recommended, that ensures that it is fully funded or it's fully staffed as it is presently designed. But in talking to Chief Giannone last night, he mentioned that to the committee that 2 frozen positions would be very helpful, so that there would be some we might call wiggle room in staffing, because the department, if it's filled, if all of its FTEs, full-time equivalents, are filled, there is marginally enough room to, there's sufficient staffing, or barely sufficient staffing, to fill behind somebody if they're gone on FMLA, vacation, sick time, administrative time. But it's very tough, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's very unusual to have a police chief like Chief Giannone. He, in addition to coming from home and handling police calls on his own and sometimes writing reports, he does a lot more than most chiefs would do, and fills in for some of those staffing vacancies. I don't think another chief would do that. So really, to give the department enough operational effectiveness, you would have to, in my opinion, fill at least one of those frozen positions.
Mm-hmm.
And that would allow for a little less overtime,
Right.
and less strain on the officers, who end up working a tremendous amount of overtime, and
Yeah.
fatigue becomes a factor.
But if we fill one of those frozen positions, doesn't that make the costs go up on these projections?
Absolutely, it does. And that's why I say this is a very expensive proposal.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking, because I think this is profound, is that we don't feel that our police department today is funded sufficiently to do the job the way they should be.
That's correct.
Okay, even though everybody looks at page 25 of the proposal, you can see that Sierra Madre's crime rate is lower overall than all the cities that we're comparing to. But this may not be sustainable with this kind of a model.
Well, one of the reasons it's sustainable is the chief has hired, and he came up with this idea several years ago, 5 or 6 part-time officers, all of whom are from LAPD.
Mhm.
They have been a tremendous help, and they are used as fill-ins presently. When the department has sick time, or people are on training, vacation, or FMLA. He has also used them very effectively for burglary patrol.
Yeah.
And they have been tremendously successful.
Yeah.
So, but it is, as was pointed out before, if the sheriffs were to provide our services, when they have somebody off on sick time, FMLA, or staff, they just pull another deputy in at no overtime occurrence. So keeping your own police department is expensive.
But the point is that, if we go out and try to communicate the choices that our citizens have between the alternatives, right now we've got numbers on a piece of paper that suggests that, say, if we look at option A, which is to keep our facility open for 16 hours a day by year 5, that's about a $500,000 savings, but that's assuming the current level of positions that we have in our police department today. So if we were to fund fully what we feel our police need to do the job properly, that cost difference is going to be more than $500,000.
You're correct, yes.
But on the other hand, too, is one thing I'm concerned about as I look through the sheriff proposal, is Mr. Coburn brought that up about our facility itself. Is the facility sufficient for the sheriff department's operation? And I really think that to take this proposal seriously, we would have to do the phase 2, and the phase 2 could reveal more costs on the sheriff's side as well.
That's,
I actually asked the sheriff that last night, if it is determined by the sheriff's department that our facilities needed upgrades or revisions or whatever, who paid for that? And he said that would be negotiated at the time that decision was made. So to Elaine's comment, you do need somebody to oversee this contract, because you may go along year to year finding out that this needs to be done, so they need to negotiate with the city to find out if we're going to pay for it, if they're going to pay for it, if it's going to be partial, where both of us are contributing. So there may be costs coming up that we are not aware of.
Yeah. Okay.
While I'm up here, to explain why I voted the way I did, there were a couple of things that really bothered me. One was response time. I think if we take the proposal where the sheriffs are here 24/7, that's not going to be an issue. Yes, there will be a learning curve. Hopefully these sheriffs will go out and learn the city streets, learn the canyon, get familiar with it, be able to get there in a good response time. But if the proposal is chosen where you close the facility for 8 hours, those units are coming from outside of the city limits, and so your response time is going to drop dramatically.
But I just want to point out that that conflicts with what your fellow member said earlier, that the units would be in Sierra Madre even when the station was closed.
Well,
Patrolling the streets.
It would.
They'd be coming from Temple City when there's a call. They would be patrolling the streets, and then when there's Temple City Dispatch calls them, they go from wherever they are on the street to where they need to be.
And they would be within our city
Yeah.
limits?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
but there are other times where they may be called to help out in neighboring areas out of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, they
Yeah, please
said
come.
that one would always be in, even if they were called out for
If I
mutual
understood
aid.
correctly, they would never take more than 50% of the on-duty staff to go to an outside area. So if you got 2 and 1, that's 3, only 1.5 of them can leave.
The other one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit was a resident asked how long it would take for the sheriffs to fingerprint a scene when it was burglarized, and the sheriff did admit it could take up to 24, 48 hours before that is done. And I don't know a lot about police work, but I feel like the first 24 hours are kind of crucial if you want to get out and catch those guys that are doing what they shouldn't be doing. So that really bothered me. The fact that we can't go back bothered me.
Understand, yeah.
So those are some of the reasons why I voted the way I did.
Can I add to that? I recall that resident said that her property was fingerprinted within minutes
After our, yeah.
by our police.
Just on the same note, though, on that point, though, what's the difference in, I mean, I don't know police terminology on metrics, but when you fingerprint for a burglary, how many times is that crime solved, say, with the sheriff department versus our own police department? So say we fingerprint quickly and they don't fingerprint so quickly, solving the crime, what's the difference?
Well, there's no there's no real way to define a metric for that. It simply, you know, when the latent prints are lifted, they're put into the system, and if they match somebody's prints that are in the system, then it's real easy to solve it. And if that person's prints aren't in the system, then it may never get solved, and it doesn't matter who does the fingerprinting.
But wouldn't you say, Mr. Handley?
It is a concern if the prints can't be done quickly, and over the years, the department has had programs at various times where the field deputies were trained and given kits to do their own printing, and they have, I don't know if they still have it now, with the law enforcement technicians that are working at the stations. They, a lot of times, have been trained and have kits that they can be sent out to do it and not have to wait for, you know, that 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah.
But I personally don't know what the status of that is because I've been retired for 11 years from it.
The questions and answers, I think, suggested that it's a possibility to train the field deputies to do it, but it wasn't committed.
Right.
So maybe that's something that would have to be spelled out in a Phase 2 proposal, perhaps.
And I would like to make a comment about response times. Yes, it's true that during a transition period when people are new to an area, they're not as familiar with it as people that have been there for a while.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, and you can take this to the bank, that every peace officer, the very first thing he does at a new assignment is to learn the area and to always know every second exactly where he is. So if he needs help, he knows where to tell people to come find him.
Well, I would say we have the same problem today with contract officers from LAPD. I mean, they're new, and, you know,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, and you know, if they get the same ones frequently, then it probably doesn't take very much time for them to become familiar with it. But, you know, the response time, yeah, for a month or so, it may take them a few minutes more.
Yeah.
But it's not going to take more than that, because the very first thing a cop does is learn the area, so he knows where to call for help if he needs it.
Okay, what other questions here, guys? I don't know.
I don't really have any questions. I'd like to comment after the public comment.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a question. I think, you know, one of the main concerns of the committees, and I think of a few folks that we've heard from, is one of culture, of fit. And I'd just like to hear from a few of you, to hear the process that you went through and thinking through that, because I think that's the one piece that I struggle with the most, is if we were to contract out with the sheriffs, what are we losing in terms of what Sierra Madre is today? You know, the sense of town, the sense of a small town feel, knowing the police officer on a first name basis, knowing that they will respond to a call. I believe one of our officers said if a toilet isn't working, sometimes they'll get calls and the officer will go out there and help fix the toilet. Things like that. How did you guys think through that issue? Because I don't think that's anything that you can quantify, and the numbers don't speak to it. So I think it's something that I'm struggling with. So.
You're right. I'm glad you asked. The numbers are important, and that's why we're here. But there's another important element to this, and that is the cultural aspect. So kind of answer, I'll tell you how I feel personally. If I get my nose bent out of shape, I know that I can go over next door and I can talk to a chief. And not only our present chief, but the chief before. And when I'm downtown, the majority of the officers know me by name, and they know the people that I'm sitting with, and they know my children by name. And they have pretty much my children's whole life, the majority of them do. We have to understand, too, that we have officers that have pretty much dedicated their careers here. We have some really long-term, and there's no guarantee that the sheriffs would pick them up. They don't get priority, they don't get special consideration, they can go right back in the mix with everybody else. When I think of, you know, what is the nature and what is the soul of Sierra Madre, you know, just throwing these long-term career officers out doesn't fit with my idea of what Sierra Madre is all about. It's also important too to realize that when we have these discussions and when councils bring this up every few years, you're eroding the confidence of these guys. You know, they're wondering, are they going to have a job next year? Are they going to have a job? And it's not good for morale that every couple of years when we're worried about budgets, that we're putting their jobs at risk. You know, and that's something else to consider too. And I think tonight when the public speaks, you're really going to learn what the cultural aspect is. You're going to hear a lot of personal testimony about good experiences that they've had. And you're probably going to hear some bad experiences that they've had with Sheriff's Department from residents who live in Sierra Madre now that came from a city that was contracted with the sheriffs. I don't want to speak ill of the sheriffs, but that was just the comments that we experienced. And you know, for those of you that have lived here a long time, you know that we know these guys by name, and we don't always like what they do, and sometimes we have issues, but we know that we can resolve them. We can go to our police department. They're not going to say, we'll make an appointment and we'll see you in 2 weeks. They're gonna take us back there and talk to us. They may agree with us, and they may not. So, and I think that is the nature of Sierra Madre. That's really what we are about. It's not an us against them. This is all of us.
Yes.
And at least the sentiment from the public testimony that we had with the Sheriff's Department, it is not going to be an us. It seems that it will be for a long time an us against them. And hopefully it would turn to an us if that's the way we go.
At the two meetings that we had a lot of people there were about 55 people who spoke. Upwards of 90% of them were in favor of keeping the Sierra Madre Police Department. That's a pretty high percentage, particularly because, you know, you hear people complaining about the police department, but the fact of the matter is that when it comes down to it, most of the people in this town want to keep it. One of the complaints that I heard, and I heard it from several people, is it's not a good fit. And by that they mean, you know, some days we're going to have guys who just came in who've been working in the prisons for the last 2 years. So we're looking at a group of people here. We have 22 people, I think the number was. LA County Sheriff's Department has 19,000. It was described by one of our residents, and I think they were accurate. It can be a paramilitary organization. That's not Sierra Madre. I mean, there was one time I remember seeing the SWAT team rolling down when we had a lockdown situation up there, and it's nice to be able to contract them out in that particular situation to come in and help us out. But I don't know that that's the mentality that we want to bring into our town. You know, it is a cultural thing, I think, that is why so many of our people want to keep the SMPD. And while it's easy to say that it wouldn't be Sierra Madre if we didn't have them, it also wouldn't be Sierra Madre if we don't have the money to pay for a city government. So this is where the hard decision comes in, guys.
Yeah, got it.
I would like to clarify something that came up when Mr. Colburn was speaking. A contract such as has been proposed by the Sheriff's Department for Sierra Madre, there would not be any brand new deputies working here. There's a formal 6-month training program that the deputy has to go through after they have worked in the jail when they come out to patrol, and that obviously has to be a 2-deputy car, and that is not what would be contracted for here. The kind of contract you're looking at here is a veteran deputy that's already been trained and would probably ask to work here. He wouldn't be forced to work here. So you would not be getting, you know, some boot fresh out of county jail looking to make a name for himself. So.
And there's one thing I forgot to say, which is a couple.
We're going to have one tonight too. It looks
a couple of the people who were here representing the sheriffs last night did talk about the fact that they could go into a station where they worked 25 years ago and there are still people there that they knew. So there will be some long-term people, most likely over time, and there will be people who will get to know our children's children as they're growing up and that sort of thing too. I don't think that that's going to entirely go away. I do think we would have much more of a rotation, but I don't know that for sure. But I did want to say that there are some long-term aspects to this as well.
Okay, if there's no more questions, it might be time to get public input on this. And before I do, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but again, when we look at the numbers here, with option A compared to the baseline, there is significant savings. Out to year 8, it's 800,000. It's less than that if, it depends on what assumptions you make about what the rate of increases, but at 3%, this is historically what the sheriff has been trending. We've got two comparisons here. One is at 5%, so obviously if the sheriff contract increases 5% every year, it's going to not be as favorable economically to go with the sheriff, but as we've already heard, there's a belief that we've underfunded our police now, and we really need to pay more to keep a baseline together. So in that scenario, the savings could be even greater. So I would just ask, I'm sure a lot of you are here to tell us how much you want to keep our police department, but really at this point, I get that, but I want to know, are you willing to pay for it? And when, when you come up, tell us that. Not yet. I haven't opened it up. Okay. Okay. Well, so we're hungry too. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so as long as you have that in mind when you make your comments, I'll feel better about what you're saying, knowing that you're willing to pay for it, because if you're not willing to pay for it, I don't know that we have a choice. Because we can consider shutting the library and eliminating community services altogether so that we can fund our police department. I really don't think that's what the community wants either, but we're going to hear from the community on these things. So keep that in mind when you make your comments. So with that, I will open it up for public comment, but I want to again ask, please keep it to 3 minutes. And if you can, line up behind so that we can move this right along. And I'm going to cut you off if you go over 3 minutes. So I'm just warning you, state your name clearly so our city clerk can get it in the record, and let's try to keep it moving. Thank you.
Renee Kasuda, Carter Avenue. And very briefly, whatever the change is always difficult. And that's something that we all need to acknowledge, either paying more in tax or changing the systems. Change is difficult.
Catherine Emerson, West Montecito. I was the one that made the fingerprint comment, and it wasn't for catching the bad guy. It as a social worker and as a first responder, it was giving safety back. At the scene of the crime, if there's glass and everything everywhere, it has to remain that way until it's fingerprinted. So as a victim, you've been violated and you have to look at that for another 48 hours. That's not very comforting. So the fact that, that our police responded immediately, and me being a single female, that is something that's very important to me, knowing that my police is going to respond. They're going to be proactive. I'm going to be able to get fingerprinted so I can clean that up. I can put the board up against the window and try to return my life as back to normal as much as possible instead of waiting up to 48 hours. The sheriffs made a comment that they could train somebody if necessary. Well, we already have somebody trained to do that. And yes, I am willing to pay. I'm willing to sit on a committee. I am willing to campaign. I'm willing to do any of that to make people aware of the necessity of this tax.
Okay, thank you.
Now I need Catherine. Are you a C or a K?
Katherine.
And last name?
Emerson, Emerson.
Thank you.
And it's doctor.
Thanks.
Hi, Barbara Lee Klein. I'm in support of the Sierra Madre Police Department, and I have great awareness of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, along with the satellite Sheriff's Department down in Temple City. A lot of law enforcement in my family's background. I've worked a lot in unincorporated cities. Again, I'm going to reinstate, I am happy with the Sierra Madre Police Department. What I did hear was, we have 2 patrols with the sheriffs, one on one side, one on the other, and someone's called out for another neighboring town. We've got 1 sheriff's, and we've just had a big release of all the different middle, low offending criminals let out of jail. So I'd be thinking to myself, I'm going to hit Sierra Madre. You've got 1 guy patrolling. He can't cover at the same time. I've got 2 or 3 other guys in town. Our crime rate's really going to go up. We don't know all that our police department does. I don't think they have adequate time to put in the paper what crimes and what they do cover. So it just looks like a small amount of work that's being done. But we're really fortunate to have guys that know us. The supervisors are great, and they weed out some of the guys that might be a little bit hot dog, you know, and they get them to know Sierra Madre citizens. If we had an earthquake, would they be called off to go to their main station? Would we then be left without any backup? I also am a first responder. Only because it says UUT down here at the bottom of items, I'm going to reinstate that the initial UUT that I walked around in town so many years ago dealt solely, which would be Plan B for you guys, solely for funds for public safety, police, and fire. Everyone voted for that in town. Later on, it got mucked up with going into the general fund. But I think Plan B, just getting it back to public safety, covers so much, would go ahead and help out both fire and police departments. I think because also we have some housing that may be coming into town, the city would have a different general fund, but I'm not going to get on that. I'm going to stick with the police department.
Thank you.
I know there's other speakers behind me, but
Yes.
truly, we're very fortunate to have guys that know us, women and men that know us here in town. And it's very different if you have the sheriff's department. Thanks.
Connie Luder, L-U-D as in David, E-R, North Cannon Drive. I'm very impressed with how well the committee summarized all of our comments last night. Want to clarify one thing about the volunteers. The volunteers, we were told, would have to go through the sheriff's training, but then could be sent anywhere in the sheriff department range, not staying in Sierra Madre only. So that was a big shock to a lot of people. I am also pleased to say that the response of the police department here has given me peace of mind over the years as a single woman and having strange sounds, be they 2-leggeds or 4-leggeds. We have had all kinds of issues in the canyon that they have responded to beautifully. Along with that, I would like to say, for me, we've been very privileged. And one of the selling points for a single woman is the safety Sierra Madre has offered us all these years. I'm a 40-year plus resident. And that has been a major real estate selling point as well. So if I look at a parcel tax as a homeowners association fee, I think you would get a whole lot of the community to be willing to increase their tax payments. There are exemptions under the definition of parcel tax, however you choose to write it. It can deal with seniors and low incomes. It would be across the board a fee, and as I say, I would sell it to the community as a homeowner's fee. And that might provide the additional money that we need to keep a quality police department and fire department. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim Johnson, 522 West Sierra Madre Boulevard. Just in summary, I am adamantly opposed to contracting out with the Sheriff's Department. I think we have an absolutely fabulous local police department here. Personnel are absolutely great. I've lived in town since the mid-50s, and not really much has changed here. We've got about the same population that we've had, about 11,000 or so. It's been that way for years. What really has changed in Sierra Madre, we're getting more daytime burglaries now because husbands and wives both work. I think everybody's aware of that, but basically Sierra Madre is still the safest, or one of the very safest cities in the entire region. I think possibly, and I'm going to make some enemies here, I think we can possibly scale our police department down a little bit. And I just want to read just a couple of sentences, if I could, from our 1969 to 1970 annual report as far as our police department back then. Police services in the city are provided by a full-time department consisting of Chief Zerker, 4 sergeants, an investigator, 9 patrolmen, that's 15 full-time, and 4 clerk dispatchers and a police cadet. And we had absolutely wonderful service back then. Crime rate was extremely low, as it is now, and it's just food for thought.
Alan Wolf, excuse me, 57 West Grandview. I'm one of the ham operators that the chief referred to. I'm a migrant worker, lived in 5 states, worked with, been a ham radio operator 51 years. Some people have heard this, only one on the council has. And I've worked with a number of law enforcement agencies as a volunteer. No place have I run into a better police department than Sierra Madre. And the absolute worst, Sheriff's Department. I was a volunteer with the Sheriff's Department. They're militaristic, they're antagonistic, they're bureaucratic, and they're difficult. I was bullied and told by these people, we don't need people like you in our department. As a volunteer, I'll have 15 people up on Alegria, about 7 or so from Sierra Madre, and then I integrate people from the other foothill communities, hams, that I choose. I will not support the Sheriff's Department. I will not volunteer for them. Many of my people will not. And if you do get Sheriff's Department people in here, they will bring up anyone they damn well please. And by the way, only one on the council listened to these sheriffs yesterday. They were slippery. They didn't answer direct questions, or they couldn't answer direct questions, and it's a concern. The $200,000 for events, that was an average across their cities.
Yeah.
That list you had on the wall, double it. Being in aerospace, I've been involved, like Maxwell Smart, with the doors closing behind. That's why I'm a migrant worker. I was. You're in a situation that I'd like you to consider. Consider the city shutting down in 2 years or 5 years. What would you do right now, as you would be in a sinking boat? What would you do? You'd unload everything you can to keep that boat running. Start. You're doing it by piecemeal. Start at the top and lop off everything except for the 4 services, Glenn said, and then bring that to the voters and say, you want this stuff back? We'll pay for it. And I gave a letter to you, saying, just ask us for the money. I'll write a check tonight for $225 to make up a gap. Ask everyone in here. Maybe they'll all do that too. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I think you trained me in, I was a ham operator about 20 years ago, I think at Kaiser, and I think you were the teacher.
Became mayor.
Yep.
Sue Laveau, Fairview Avenue. I'll write that $250 check too. I think that there's just a whole lot of us out there in the community that would be happy to do that. I mean, I know that 2 years ago, a loaf of bread cost me $1.69. Now it's $3.89. The community just really needs to understand that everything's changing and things cost more, and the city does not have the revenue base to generate that kind of money without implementing taxes. In terms of the volunteers, I know from running several of the community events in town over the years that the volunteers are crucial to what we do. I used to have about 200 volunteers just for the Wisteria Festival for one day. If any one of those volunteers thought for a moment, they don't mind getting certified by our PD, but if they have to get certified by the Sheriff's Department and then be taken out of town and not available for the events that they intended to volunteer for, you don't have them, and there go the events. Because you cannot run these without them, period. And in terms of my history with the Sierra Madre PD, I raised children here. We threw some parties at my house, Mr. Harbedian. Mr. Capocha, I think a couple of your kids were there as well. But I have to say that every single time the police came, and they did, they were always respectful, always patient, always understanding of the kids, never harassed them. And my most recent experiences with them have been with my daughter, who at the time was a single mom and had a couple of break-ins at her apartment here in town, and she was terrified. And I cannot say more for Larry and all of the guys, and the gals that showed up too, how wonderful they were in making her feel safe again and being able to sleep in her own apartment by herself with her 1-year-old baby. I think it would be foolish and short-sighted to bail on our police department. As I understand it, the contract, anybody can step out, but it's a forever contract. Is that correct? So if we decide 2 years down the road that we're not happy with the Sheriff's Department, what happens? We have nothing. We cannot rebuild a PD. And if the Sheriff's Department 2 years down the road decides they don't want to be here, we're left with absolutely nothing. So I hope that you guys will really look down the road when you make this decision. Thank you.
Pat Alcorn on Grandview. And the discussion last night, it was pretty obvious that the residents did want to have their own police department. It's also pretty obvious that the city really doesn't have the money right now to support our own police department. And I talked to a lot of the people that were in the audience last night, and they all said, okay, we'll pay for it. So there is another alternative, and that's a property tax assessment, and that's what one of the previous speakers talked about. It probably will take about 2 years to get it on the ballot, and it does require a 2/3 vote, but if the people that are here tonight and the other people in the community that are so anxious to have our own police department, it could happen. It would, as I say, 2 years to get it on the ballot, and probably about that length of time for education for the community also. In order to cover the shortfall, though, you're going to talk about a UUT tonight also. So that could be the 2 years, in the 2 years that would cover the police department before that issue could get on the ballot. And but I just also wanted to say that they talked about the dispatcher. There would not be a 355 number. So yeah, if you have an emergency, you call 911, and that would come from Verdugo. But if you wanted to talk to somebody from the police department, the dispatcher is down at Temple City. So I was at the over next door returning the key from the park house one night when the dispatcher was talking to someone who was having a family problem. And while she was talking to the person, it wasn't a 911 call necessarily, but she was able to talk to the person, calm them down, assure them that one of our policemen would be there shortly to help them with their problem. So, that's just another consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Beatrice Navarez. I live on West Montecito. Actually live with Catherine. I'm actually one of the people who did say at one of the meetings that if the LA County Sheriffs did take over our city, I would be one of the ones who will be carrying a firearm, would possess a firearm in our home. I did grow up in a rough neighborhood prior to living here, and the reason for living here was to come and live in a safer city. As many of you do know, we do have Larry the Pig, previously Neil, and it's a shame that we have so many visitors who do come to our house, but to think that we may have the sheriffs, and I already look out the window to see who it is that we do have visiting because of the burglaries we do have, and I do have that reassurance when I do look out the window, because 9 times out of 10, not only do I see friendly and familiar faces, but I also see our Sierra Madre PD up and down our streets just looking out for things. And knowing LA County Sheriffs will come in, knowing when I look out that window, I'll probably have my gun in my hand at the same exact time, because that face I might see on the other end may not be so familiar and so friendly. And my face may not be so friendly and smiley as it usually is. So I'm just like with everybody else. I'll do what it takes, volunteer, pay the extra taxes, pay whatever we need to do to make sure that we can go ahead and keep our local Sierra Madre PD. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kurt Richter, 529 West Highland. And I just want to say that as a city council, you guys appear to be in a very unique position, actually, where your constituency is willing to pay for what is necessary.
So they say.
I think, well, it would appear.
Yeah.
And if that needs to be put on the ballot, then, I think before any decision like this is made, I think this is an important enough decision that the people need to really, speak out on, speak on this and not have a decision rammed down their throat. As I look around the country, the state, the county, and I look at the effectiveness of large bureaucratic operations like the LA sheriffs, the state government, the federal government, and you can't show me one of those operations that does a good job in running what they're supposed to run. It just doesn't happen. And just a final, I had the pleasure of playing golf recently. I just happened to go out as a signal down to Santa Anita, and I got paired with 3 LA County sheriffs. And I can tell you, after listening to them for 5 hours, it is no cultural fit. These guys are, these guys were just, they would not fit into what we want here. What they talked about, their drug use, all sorts of stuff, their partying and everything. We don't want them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Johnny Tuen, Grandview. Didn't realize how big a piece of this town lives on Grandview. Thuen for the record.
Thank you.
I grew up just stone's throw from here in Temple City under sheriffs, and was there from about birth to the age of 20. I'm not here to badmouth them, not here to say bad things about them. We could do a lot better. We're already doing a lot better where we're at. We need to further fund the station we have and not look at a possible $6 or $7 million restart up if we find out we made a huge mistake, which is what I think it would be to bring in the sheriffs.
Mm-hmm.
I also lived close to 20 years in Pasadena, in a county area between Pasadena and Altadena that was sheriffs. Response time is different. I could name probably a dozen of my teachers from my days in Temple City. I couldn't name one police officer there. It's not the same. you don't have the same connection. I had something here in town, just a very small disagreement with how an officer handled an event a couple weeks ago. And I went in to see the watch commander, Ruben Enrique. And boy, you know, there's a couple handshakes. There was a real reasonable talk. There was getting back to me on the matter. It's just not going to happen that way with the sheriffs. In fact, they're going to look resentful for, why are you even here? I mean, and I've dealt with this. It's not going to be the same. I'm hoping you guys are just kind of doing this to scare people into voting for some taxes. But I do want to say I reminisce for the days when we hired politicians to do the hard work and get the revenue and didn't put it up for referendum because, you know, it just doesn't always get voted to get those monies. And, you know, how about you guys find some money for us? I'll pay.
Okay.
A lot of people in here said they'll pay. Keep the police.
Okay. Now, you realize you're speaking as a citizen. You only get 3 minutes. You could have had as much time as you wanted before.
Darn. Missed my chance. Rosemary Burnett, East Montecito. I just wanted to correct something that was said earlier. Pat mentioned that nobody would be manning the 355-1414 number. I did ask the sheriffs that in an aside, because I was concerned about that, and they said that they would have somebody to man that phone if we had the 24/7 plan. If we don't have the facility, or if we had the facility part-time, they would be putting a blue phone in the lobby so that if somebody came in needing help, they could pick up that blue line and call for help from there. So I just wanted to clarify that.
David Gordon, Fairview Avenue. We haven't been able to see a copy of the report. So is there going to be another meeting where this is going to be discussed so that people can have a chance to have read the report in advance?
It's on the website.
On the website?
Yes, it is, yeah.
When did it go up?
Which report were you referring to, the sheriff's report?
Yeah, the
or-
sheriff's report.
That's been up since July on the website.
The report of the safety committee.
The report of the safety committee was just up as of this morning.
I see, but that's the one I'm referring
Oh, yeah.
to.
Yeah.
There's a PDF of this also?
Yes, that's been up since July.
Okay.
This
The report of
for
the
the safety
committee that
committee
we're
was
discussing,
This morning.
It was just published.
yes.
But it's on the
I'm
website.
saying we haven't had time to review it, so will there be another opportunity to discuss it? Because it's
We
obviously...
will, you'll hear when we get back and discuss it. We haven't
Right.
made any decisions yet.
I do hope that there's another opportunity, because you asked the key question, how is it going to be paid for?
Well,
Clearly,
I'll just say this, I don't think you're going to get 5 votes to do away with our police department tonight. I just don't think that's going to happen, but I could be wrong, you know. We'll see.
No. I mean,
Okay.
it's clear everybody wants to keep the police force,
Yeah.
but what we have been offered is an alternative between keeping the police force with ever-increasing cost and contracting out.
Yeah.
And I think there's an important another option we have to look at.
Yeah.
And that is reducing the costs of the police force. And who's going to study that? An independent body, or is it the staff and so on and so forth? Because
I can't
obviously
answer.
there's so much emotion
Yeah.
tied up with the police force. But getting an objective appraisal of how the costs of the police force could be reduced, I think is an option that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
Linus Pekulski, 400 Fairview. We all want our police department. It's old news. We know that. But we're down to dealing with a lack of money. So that isn't our only big problem in this town. We have an infrastructure problem with the plumbing of this town that has to probably renew the bond. That's going to have to come up to a vote. I think the city council has to figure out a way to convince the people that if they want their police department, they're going to have to pay for it. There's no shortcut to lack of money. And come up with an assessment, $500 a family. Live it, and there's no way around it. Or some number that you guys can figure out, because we also have to have our pipes fixed. I mean, it's ridiculous to have orange water in my pipe for 5 years. And so you guys got a big problem there. We want our police department, we want new pipes, we want this, we want that, but you're going to have to get the people convinced.
Yep.
They're going to have to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mike Amario, Acacia Street, Sierra Madre. I had come with some prepared remarks, but after listening, I'm not sure all the facts are out there, so I'm not prepared to speak on my prepared remarks. But I am prepared to suggest that I think we have more work to do to make a decision. I heard the council, or I'm sorry, the committee talk about different things. Some said there's no patrol. Some said there was patrol. There's certainly discrepancies in the cost savings or not. There's been assumptions used on increases in the sheriff's cost, assumptions on increases in the salary of our police department. And then we heard from the chief, the former chief, say we have a lot more costs coming. And that hasn't been considered. I think we are not ready to make a decision. With that said, I am a huge fan of our police department, but I also understand potential savings in the financial situation our city is in, and we cannot be prepared for change. Just a quick history lesson. I'm not a city person. I'm in business. We're all aware of Xerox, Toys R Us, many other companies that was afraid of change, status quo. We know where they are now. They're not in business anymore. This city cannot go to bankruptcy. We all have raised children here. A lot of us have grown up in this city. We have to be fiscally responsible. If there is an opportunity, and it's unclear based upon what I heard tonight, but if there is an opportunity to save $800,000 a year, that cannot be dismissed. We are not in a position to make that decision tonight. I would hope that the council would postpone any votes, gather a lot more facts. Let's really understand what the sheriffs will or will not do. Let's not form judgments on a golf course. I've golfed with many people. That's not the place. We need to talk to the sheriffs and understand patrol, understand what our station is, and then we could come back and make some informed decisions. I do not want my children to grow up in a city that files for bankruptcy. We are close to that. Thank you.
Barry Gold, 441 Ramona Avenue. Good evening, Mayor Capoccia and council members. Unfortunately, I really believe that sooner or later, we're going to have to make a change in our public safety services. Even if the UUT measure, which you're going to be putting on next April's ballot, passes, it's just a matter of time before we're going to run out of general fund money for the police department and for other things general fund is used for. And I know a parcel tax or other property-based tax is becoming a very popular thing. And I actually favor a parcel tax, but only for the purpose of improving our infrastructure, only for replacing the water mains and the pipes, and then the streets and the sidewalk repairs, not for any general fund purpose. We're going to need $40 to $80 million to fix our infrastructure. Parcel tax is the only place we can get that kind of money, and then when we ask for all those millions, how can we ask for more for other things? So we're going to have to cut eventually. I would commend the Sheriff's Review Committee for doing such a comprehensive job and giving you so much information to try to digest since last night, making the recommendation. There's no way you can make a decision tonight. This just can't be done. But you have enough information now to understand that there's a few more questions that have to be asked, such as how do we handle volunteers, How do we refine the cost of special events, etc.? And the best answer is going to lie somewhere, as Chairman Lambden said, somewhere, some kind of hybrid between option A and B. So I recommend you have the committee meet another time or two, and knowing what they know now that they didn't before they started, refine the plan that would be tailored exactly right for Sierra Madre. How many people, how many times, how many hours, and then ask the sheriff to quote on that, and then 2 or 3 or 4 months, whatever time it takes, you will make it a better informed decision. Finally, I know the UUT is also a topic on this item, so I want to very briefly say that I believe that the exemption should be changed from low to very low. Right now, the exemption, there are 5 categories of income exemptions. Above moderate, moderate, low, very low, extremely low.
Mr. Gold, excuse me. I did ask everybody to keep it within 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. My name is Gary Hood. I live in North Baldwin. You probably know my credentials, but if those in the crowd I will mention, I have 37 years as a paid emergency response person. I have worked and met every police chief since Chief Christensen, Bayer, Chief Diaz, and Giannoni. Know that I've gone up to the chief's office and made myself available on a positive manner. When I was working with the Fire Safe Council here in town, I went out with the police department on neighborhood watch. I have worked with, I have been in probably about every major city in the United States and worked with their safety officers. I've worked and met with the New York Police Department. I know people and work with people in the Riverside Sheriff's Department, the LA County Sheriff's Department, and I come forward with my experience, and I have to say that if you wanted to talk trash about the sheriffs, then we need to go back a few years before the chiefs that I have mentioned. Sierra Madre Police Department has had some real problems in the past. And I'm not here to bring that up because I've worked with these officers and we have some excellent police officers here in town. What the chiefs have done and improved this department is impressive. And Chief Diaz will vouch that I have worked with the police department. And so I come with an open mind and with experience of dealing with other departments and major problems. And there is no problem as long as there is no problems like an earthquake or something like that. The Sheriff Department brings a lot of professionalism. We have some excellent officers on this department that would do real well with the Sheriff's Department. They would probably appreciate the higher salary. But 2 times in a row, the UUT has failed. People are just about taxed and done with it. I do not see that the UUT will pass, and I think that we have some serious problems that we need to take care of. The Sheriff's Department, I'm sure, will do a fine job. I've seen how they've interacted with other communities, and they bring a lot of resources. So, unfortunately, we are running short of money, and I think that we have to give the Sheriff's Department a serious consideration. And Godspeed with the officers with Sierra Madre so that they can get a job with the Sheriff's Department because they definitely get more money. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
My name is still Phil Cannon, and I still live on Edgeview. I don't have a dog in this hunt. I've got a good friend who lives in Duarte, and he says the sheriffs are great. I originally thought, gee, this is going to be scary, and it's a lot to be afraid of if we have a new police force come up here and all these crooks get out of jail and they hear we've got the sheriffs and there's not as much resources or coverage. And maybe that's right. I don't really know. I don't think I really have an opinion on whether or not you want to hire the sheriffs or keep the police department. I do have an opinion on fiscal management, and I took the time to read some of the literature that some of you put out to get elected. I wanted to know, who are these guys and what did they say to get elected? And you said it really well. And one thing that I saw fairly consistently was, we want to limit and control development. That seemed like a consistent sort of a theme in this town. And I love it being a small town, but I guess I'm wondering if that were softened up a little bit, that theme of limiting and controlling development, if that were softened up a little bit, maybe there would be some revenues that Mrs. Delmar was talking about last week that are extra over and above the UUT. Maybe, maybe not. You're the best judges of that, but it might be something to think about. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Michael Paris, 465 East Laurel Avenue in Sierra Madre. I wanted to bring up a situation that really developed because of Proposition 13. I'm a strong supporter of Proposition 13. But when I look here at what Tim brought up, I actually brought this to the office and gave it to Tim. So 1970, Sierra Madre, how everything was just so splendid back then. They were capturing a certain amount of property tax based at close to 3% of the current assessed value of homes, which is quite excessive in today's dollars. If you think about a home that's worth $750,000, you're maybe looking at close to $2,000 in property tax per month. So Prop 13 really changed a lot of things and gave a lot of benefits to homeowners. I couldn't live here and pay this kind of tax if we didn't have a Prop 13 protecting the homeowners and long-term homeowners here. My suggestion is to seriously consider a property tax, a flat tax, not based on the value of the home, so straight across the board tax, to have the citizens vote on to help with the financial issues we have to overcome here. Personally, I'm really neutral with the decision on what to do about our police department, but I'm really leaning towards trying to work out to maintain our current police department. I'm very, very concerned about the water issue, and I believe that a parcel tax is something that could really go over if it's presented in a very honest, straightforward manner, how the funds would be spent and not abused. There's a real problem with government and the incredibly lavish pension plans for government workers of all types, with the help of unions having that. Frankly, I've worked since I was 18 years old, full-time, and I'm on my own to take care of my own retirement, as many citizens here. The citizens here, it's getting to the point where they make a lot less money and have a lot less retirement benefits than the people who are serving them in city government. So I personally believe that we need to really look at where we can cut and reduce costs in any manner possible and ask for a property tax that would be reasonable, honest, and ethical, that could really help resolve a lot of our problems. We have to be careful with the UUT. I believe it could get shot down again. I don't want to see a tax revolt here with all of a sudden
Hey, Mr. Paris.
putting up
Mr.
zero
Paris,
UUT and it
excuse
gets
me,
passed.
your 3
So
minutes
that's all
are
I have
up.
to say. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you.
I'm going to switch to the tax part right now. Him mentioning about Prop 13, when I was a patrol deputy with the Sheriff's Department, I worked in the city of Pico Rivera. Pico Rivera, at the time, we're talking pre-Prop 13, this is in the middle 70s. Despite the city's reputation for gang difficulties and whatnot, they had what I still think was the nicest city parks that I have ever seen. And the city of Pico Rivera did not, at that time, assess a property tax. So maybe somebody on staff here can give Pico Rivera a call to look back in the archives and see how they managed to have such a good municipal operation without the property tax that everybody else was assessing. That would be, a suggestion to look at. They may not have anything by now. That was 40 years ago, but they may have something. They may have some ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, last call.
Evening, City Council. Mary Carney from 62 West Allegria. I found myself thinking that we were looking at, in comparing the various things, I don't know if anybody took into account the potential growth in residents over the next 8 years. I know that one of the limiting factors in Sierra Madre of how many residents we can have is how much water we have. But I know that there's an ongoing pressure to increase population density in Sierra Madre from the outside world. The state requires 5-year updates. How are we going to handle more people? More people means, a greater tax base. As older people pass on and their homes are purchased, the tax base goes up. One of the things I think that any realtor in town should be aware of, and speaking with someone who moved into town relatively recently, is they didn't seem to address the fact that the town had a UUT, which surprised the new residents. And I would imagine that if other new residents came into town and bought a home and made changes and so on, and then discovered that they were paying an additional 10% that was not part of the pre-planning budget, that they would be very much against a UUT or against a lot of things, and there would be a lot of resentment. I would like all realtors who are involved in real estate to make sure they explain the financial situation in the city so that people are not surprised, and that they're aware that when they move into town, in order to continue to enjoy the situation that they are moving into, that it is going to be taking more money. And our entire infrastructure, countywide and nationwide, even our highways, it is going to be needing more and more money to maintain. So it's not that we can, it's just going to have to come from somewhere, or we're going to have to settle for a lower quality than what we thought we had. And I of course support the police department wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call.
I believe this was addressed before, but one way to significantly reduce all the costs we've discussed for policing would be to contract with Arcadia PD, because they could provide as little as one officer in our city, rely on their sergeants, and I don't have the numbers, but they couldn't be as expensive as what the sheriffs are costing, or even our own police department. I realize there was may have been some resistance to that, but perhaps that might be something that could be revisited at your level.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think that's everybody, so we'll bring it back to council. Before we do, should we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay. here, so.
Oh, I'll use that gavel. Break the tradition.
No, we'll
Be
just,
the rebel.
Let's start the gavel going.
they want me to use the gavel here.
Use the gavel.
That's why I can't, I can't touch it. Okay, all right. Where do we go from here, folks? Go ahead, you want to go first? Councilmember Arizmendi?
No. I always go first. We'll let Baden go.
I'll go first, but, you know, I'm easy to, I'm
fine to
very
go.
opinionated.
I can either go first or you can go first.
Why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, thank you to the committee members for all their hard work and for members of the public for being here tonight and, I guess, sharing your own views and helping us think through this. I think that it is a very difficult decision that previous councils have wrestled with in the past, and inevitably we got to this point, which I don't think is a shock to anyone up here or councils that served just prior to this. And I think it's really tough. I mean, I don't think that this is a very clear-cut issue because I, for one, personally am very against outsourcing to the sheriffs. And if I had a perfect world and as much money in my budget, in the city's budget as I wanted, there'd be no question. I would keep the Sierra Madre PD funded to a level that was sufficient, which I don't think is where we are right now, and not have this conversation. The reality is we're at a different point where if things stay as they are, we're looking at $1 million deficit. And I do think that at this point, depending on what happens with the UT vote in April, we as a council and as fiduciaries of the city have to make sure that we have options at that point. Is a simple way to say that I don't want to foreclose as a council our ability to deal with a potential devastation of our budget come April. And I'll say that I agree with everyone that said we should do everything we can to keep our police department, hands down. I don't think that the sheriffs are a good fit here. I don't want to see us outsource to them. But I don't think that, and that's me as a resident, it's me as a council member, but I also think that as a council member, it's my duty to make a tough decision and say, we need to, despite all the cultural and fit issues and the ramifications down the road that I think that this will have for this town, if the voters do not, come April, really show us that they're willing to pay for our police department, then the reality is we have to make tough decisions. And it's going to be losing something that we have currently in this town, and that may be our police department. It may be our library, it may be other departments, it may be a combination. And I don't want to foreclose my ability as a council member come May 2016, excuse me, of having every option possible to make that decision. And that's the tough reality that I'm facing right now. And because of that, I think that the committee made probably the same recommendation I would as a committee member. But as a council member, my charge, I think, is a bit different, which is taking the committee's proposal, balancing it with the budget issues that we're dealing with and that we've been dealing with now for, going on 4 years. I know the reality is I've been told before that we're willing to pay for it, and then we lose in election after election, and we are constantly dealing with an issue of where are you going to cut hundreds of thousands of dollars from our budget, and how are you going to retain the quality of life in the city that we currently live in while doing that? And there was a comment made earlier that we are taking the easy way out by looking at only revenue and not cost cutting, and that's almost offensive to hear that, because over the last 4 years, 5 years, we've cut close to $2 million from our general fund, give or take. So the idea that this council hasn't looked at costs and hasn't cut this budget to the bone is just that's devoid of fact. It's not the truth. So this is a council right now that's stuck with a situation where we've cut almost everything that we can cut. And if the UT, as we present it, the UT vote as we present it in April doesn't pass, you're talking about major changes and possibly losing entire departments. So I guess all that being said, I think that the committee's proposal was a good one, and I think it's probably the same one I would have made. Again, I just think as a council member, I have to leave options open come April. So I guess I would be open to going to phase 2 with the knowledge that I really hope we don't have to go anywhere past that. And that's where I am right now.
Okay, who else would like to comment?
I'll jump in. First, it was a pleasure working on that committee with our former police chief, former mayor, some outstanding citizens in our community. I really enjoyed and respected working with Don Hanley, just a wealth of knowledge in law enforcement. I think it's pretty well known that I'm a big supporter of our police department. And I have the view that not only is it a good police department, but that a locally controlled police department is an indispensable part of the culture of a small town. I don't believe we can call ourselves an independent small town if we are an appendage to one of the largest bureaucracies in the world, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We would literally be giving away the control of our destiny to strangers that we'd have absolutely no influence with. So I have theoretical reasons, I have very practical reasons. I've lived here for almost 20 years now, have had many opportunities to engage our police department, all of them with incredible satisfaction. I think they're a gem. I think they're a bargain. What we're paying for them and what we're getting is a bargain. And so I agree with what Councilmember Harabedian says. When I hear we haven't cut, I mean, if you've been paying attention to these meetings, go back and take a look at the agenda packets. Go back and take a look at our decisions. We've been cutting ever since I've been on the council, and these guys have been on the council 2 years before me, and they were cutting. This is not a fat government, folks. This is not a fat city government. I know some people in town think that. I just challenge them to pull out their red pencils and show us what they would cut. So that's why we had this committee in the first place. Let's save money. We have $1 million hole, okay? Let's save money. None of these proposals saves $1 million. Let's just say that right up front. The one proposal that saves the most, everybody on the committee said we don't want it. We don't want a police department that's based in Temple City. That's the one that saves some serious bucks. Now, there is one proposal in the out years, 6, 7, 8 years, you get up to $700,000-800,000 a year, and that is serious. And Mike Mario and other people have pointed this out. That's serious money. We have to take that seriously. But I just want everyone to know that if we decided to contract to the sheriffs tonight, we still are looking at a major hole on July 1st. I hope everyone hears that. This is no panacea at all. So I think that, I mean, if I had my way and could wave a magic wand, we would have a 12% UT passed in April strictly for the purpose of buying us some time to sit down as a council and come up with a more long-term tax base that is more robust, that could do more things for our police department, free up the general fund for other things. And by the way, we need to talk about that in combination with some sort of infrastructure as well. So I don't see the UT as bailing us out. I just see us as buying us some time. Having said that, again, I think, Mike, I'm glad you came tonight, because when you talked about the idea of us facing bankruptcy, that really woke me up. I mean, I've been thinking about it, but I had to have somebody who knows numbers remind me about that. We could be facing bankruptcy in a couple of years. I cannot sit here with a straight face and just hope the UT passes and then be sitting here with no options, on May 1st. So I think that Councilmember Harabin is exactly right. I think in principle I'm opposed to it. I'm absolutely opposed to it. And I'm hoping the EUT passes and buys us some time. But I think we ought to consider the second phase and bring in the sheriffs and go through this a little bit more in depth. So we have more numbers, so we have an understanding of more where we're at, so we haven't foreclosed that option completely. I wish I could tell you differently, but I just don't think I'd be being responsible if I am. I'm not telling people I'm going to vote to contract out our sheriff's department. I just want that option until we know whether the public is willing to pay the utility tax.
Okay. Ladies?
First of all, I do want to thank also the committee. I at some point have been part of the larger committee, but as it changed to the sheriff's proposal committee, I stepped down, and thank you, Councilmember Goss, for staying with that committee and being the liaison there. But I know there's a lot of hard work. There were a lot of time that was put into it. And again, those even just the questions and answers that I saw from this last meeting was very telling as to the thought and the analysis and evaluation that went into the committee and taking a look at the proposal. You know, one of the reasons my husband and I moved here was a couple of reasons. I wanted a bagel shop close by, and now there is a bagel shop, but there was a coffee shop that I could walk to. But I also looked for a place where people said hello, and that is a place that we have here in Sierra Madre. But thirdly was a place that we could walk our dog at 10:30 at night. And I know one of the reasons that I feel safe at 10:30 at night walking my dog is because, yes, the culture of this town, but two, really is because of the police department. And I am very thankful for the work that they do and the effectiveness that they bring to the city. And you know, I remember posting on my Facebook when we were named, I don't know, top 10 of one of the safest cities. And I attribute a lot of that, obviously, to the community and the people here, but also to the police department. And with all that being said, I also know that the responsibility that we have here as a city council and myself as a city council member and my commitment to looking at our finances and enforcing fiscal responsibility, I know it would be irresponsible to not consider the proposal that's put forth. I can say personally, that is not something that I want to do. I want to maintain our police department as is. And it does also concern me that I know Chief Diaz, former Chief Diaz, as she had pointed out, is that a consideration we would have to make is the possibility of increasing the police department if we stayed with our current department right now and filling some of those frozen positions and possibly some other costs. So again, I think it would be financially irresponsible to not consider this proposal. I know that I had volunteered to be part of the 6% budget subcommittee with the mayor, and this will definitely have to be part of the consideration as we're looking at what a 6% budget would look like. And I also see in this proposal that, and I'm glad that now the public can see these numbers too. I think they had access to it, but now are looking at it a little bit more closely. But the savings don't all of a sudden come within year one unless we go with the no facility, which is that proposal 3. And that is an option that I wouldn't even want to consider. So understanding that if we are going with even some of these proposals, we may not even see savings till year 2 if we go with proposal A, or not even seeing savings with proposal B until year 7. And I think it'll be important that as we're looking at the 6% budget, that we're considering this, but also looking at the hybrid. I don't know about looking into phase 2. I think there were some really good questions brought up with considering what some of these hybrids would look like and some specific questions. But it would be helpful to at least get a better estimate as to what phase 2 looked like. I heard 25,000. I know that's what we put in these projections, then I also heard 50,000, and I don't know what would need to be done in order to get a better estimate on phase 2, but I'm wondering if we can even take a step before that to see if we can look at some of the hybrid considerations and to see if the sheriffs can come back with what those costs would look like. So where I stand at this point is considering the proposal, one of these proposals, as part of the 6% budget that we are going to have to come up with, no matter what. But knowing that, I'm hoping that we can find a way to keep our police department, because again, it really is, and I can hear it from the residents that came today and from the numerous emails that were received, that there is so much to be said about keeping them in place.
Well, again, thank you to the committee and all their hard work and coming out tonight, and all of our public who talked. And I look at this in two ways. I look at, as we did with the library subcommittee, no one wants to contract out the library. Nobody wants to contract out the police department. But looking at the proposals, is it something that we would still be able to keep our level of service, the patrol on the streets, and still try to retain that community feel? In the proposal, what they said, it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. My other concern really is listening to the fact that we don't have a lot of this, we don't have our staff for the police department, and that to me is a big red flag for safety. Yep. So, and looking at the proposal, I would say I would consider going with the phase 2 just to see exactly what it would look like. I would also recommend, because I don't think this is just a police department issue, is looking at the fire department. And that, that used to be a volunteer department, and now we have to come up with 3 engineers, and we now have an EMT staff or paramedic staff. So I think also looking at the fire department and the whole public safety arena may help us make some decisions in the future. I think it's time to say we need to look at what it would take to put a parcel tax on the ballot in the future. And, not really in favor of taxes, but if we're going to retain the full city atmosphere, we need to have something else on the books. The UUT is just going to put a Band-Aid on it. We have infrastructure coming down the road. So I don't want to contract out the police department. If we had to, I think the sheriff's department has come up with, some solutions for us if we get to the point where we have to do that, where we just can't sustain our own police department, fire department, what we need to do. So that would be my recommendation, is to look at the phase 2 and see exactly what it would be. And maybe, talking to the Arcadia and Pasadena, I know they passed on us before, but maybe instead of contracting, we can do some consolidation. And we can share some upper management, we can share some resources to bring the cost of what we are dealing with our fire and police department down to a level that we can support, but just be working in consolidation with the other cities. So if that would be possible, I would like to put that on my wish list too.
Okay, well, I have sentiments very similar to what was expressed, so I'm just not going to go into it. But one thing I heard from everybody is a willingness to go to the phase 2, and that was something I came in with. Think that's really crucial. And I'm thinking ahead a little bit more, and I think it was Josh Moran on the last council that had the idea that this is too big a decision to be made by a transitory council here. And I'd like to find a way to really, have the voters vote directly on it, but we've got plenty of time to think about that before the next one. But meantime, I think we need to do the phase 2, and we need to have more public, hearings that are televised. And I think, we talked about doing some polling. I think even after we give some presentations and have some public discussions, once we really have good facts on the table, then maybe that'd be a good time to poll people to say, did you participate? And if you did, what's your opinion? And did you not participate? And then we might get a good idea that if they don't participate, they'll probably vote no on taxes because they really don't understand the depth of the problem that we have. So we've got time to figure that stuff out. But in the meantime, I mean, same as what was expressed. When I look at this and I see a potential of $500,000 a year savings in year 5, as a council person, I can't ignore that. I think it just, we have to take a close look at that to see, because we just can't let the city go bankrupt. So hopefully everything will work out in April. People will approve the utility tax, and I don't think that gets us off the hook. I think we still have to take a hard look at this because as we heard, and I believe it is not sustainable to run our police department in the condition that it's in without paying the officers more so that we can recruit officers and stay staffed. This is not a good thing to be down 4 officers and have to rely on part-time officers to fill in behind them. You know, if that's the case, if that's our long-term plan, we might as well go to the sheriff. I mean, they'll learn the city just as fast as these other part-time officers will. So I think we need to do that immediately is to get to phase 2. Then, as Councilmember Arizmendi says, we're going to start doing the contingency planning if we are unable to, with a 6% budget. And in that case, I'm looking at these numbers and boy, this doesn't help that much. In year 2, even if we go to option A, that's a $280,000 savings after we've already burned $200,000 to get there. So then we're talking about drastic cuts to the library and everything else. I mean, if we go down to a 6%, it is just not sustainable to keep our own police department. So we'll get into that. We're going to meet soon and start working that out, and we'll come back with a recommendation to council, and I'm sure you guys will tweak it, and we'll make a decision. But, you know, just putting everything together, I mean, do we all agree that we should give staff the direction to proceed with phase 2 on this?
Yeah.
What staff would do is get a formal estimate from the sheriff's department on what that will cost.
Yeah.
A quick consent calendar item authorizing the expenditure, and
Yeah.
we would proceed from there.
And we may need to do a little bit more work. It was mentioned. I mean, what do we want a quote on? Is it option A, is it option B, or is it something else? I mean, is that something that the committee would be willing to take another look at to say,
I think they would be.
okay, if we're going to get a quote, yeah, what do you think is the best fit for Sierra Madre? Now, we just also have to be careful that the committee also understands the budget dilemma that we're in. And I know from the committee's point of view that you're working on police work, and that is clearly the number 1 priority of a city, but I don't know if the rest of the council is willing to completely close our library and to do away with all the other services we do so that we can maintain a high level of police services. I'm going to take the position to say that if the voters do not approve, say, a 10% utility tax, I'm going to take that as a message that you are accepting cuts across the board, that you cannot keep the police services the way they are and trash everything else with that. So, but that's my opinion, and I'll put it forth that way. But so, do we think the committee would be willing to work on this a little bit more to come up with a?
You're saying yes.
I would think so. You know, it may be helpful. Just give us a number. How much do you want to save a year?
Yeah.
Let us reverse engineer it that way.
Yeah, that might be helpful. Boy, but you'd be really putting us on the spot.
I wouldn't want to do a number. You know, I would like to see what they could come up with as a hybrid or, like I said, consolidation. I wouldn't want to say we need to save this X amount of money because the next year it's going to be a little bit more. And I don't want to tie it just to finance. I mean, I think there was some mention that there's some things in proposal B. Is that this, or is proposal A, the 16-hour one?
A.
That's A.
That we could do some changes in that, which I think would be great. I do want to go on record saying I don't think we can close our police station completely.
No.
Even though that's the most savings, I find that very risky for our town.
Yeah.
But I do think we need to give the committee some sort of
Guidance.
concrete guidance direction, because, you know, if we just go back and say, help us with phase 2, come up with a hybrid, it might be maddening for them,
Yeah.
you know.
Councilmember Harabedian, I see kind of two scenarios. I see one with a utility tax passing at 10%, and then we would use this proposal at a future time to maybe ask the voters to vote directly on whether they want to achieve this kind of savings, or should we use that, is this a good way to spend our precious tax dollars, or could those dollars be spent somewhere else? That would be based on a 10% utility tax. Then we've got the sunset to 6%, which is a scorched earth. And now we're talking about cutting to a degree that, is certainly more than what we would do if we had a 10% tax.
Right.
So, maybe you just look at two scenarios, and, I would trust our representative on the committee to give some guidance with that. And I know we're never going to come up with a number for you, but.
If I may, if you recall, the sheriff works off of, basically, it's a unit pricing.
Yeah.
So if you tell us, how much do you want to save and what kind of staffing do you want?
Yeah.
We can then start putting the units together. We can get those numbers from the sheriffs, but otherwise, we're just kind of operating cluelessly.
Right. And I think
Really
it's-
up to you. What do you want us to do specifically? I'm sure we'd be more than happy to do it.
For me, and I'll just think, I think the event staffing figure is really important.
Yes.
Right, I think that's something in phase 1 that they kind of frankly
lost
lost
over.
over.
Yeah.
So I think event staffing, especially in Sierra Madre, is going to be really important. And I do think that we need to just have them, and I'm not sure if the committee needs to do all that much on this, but we just need the sheriff to sharpen their pencil and say, what are the real, these numbers were presented to us in May, and I think if we give them a unit number, or you do it either way, you either say we want to save this much money, or we want to say we want this many, this many patrol, or this many deputies on patrol for this many hours, and we want the station open. You could do it either way, either from the front end or the back end, but I think that for me, it's really the event staffing, and again, I would prefer to say, we want to save this amount of money, and what can we get for that?
Mhm.
Because if we go to them and say, hey, we want the station to be open, we want 2 patrol cars, it was pretty much what we already got.
No, the proposal they have for both option A and B is 3 patrols, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 patrols in the.
Deputies, though, on A.
Deputies and 1 sheriff,
Right.
right?
No, I thought there was 3 in the hours from 2 PM to 10 PM.
Right, part of the day there is 3, you're correct. Part of the day there's 3
Yeah.
deputies, and part of the day there's 2.
Yeah. So I'd say a minimum, I'll just throw it out there, I think a minimum of 2 patrols at all time.
2
I like
deputies
the
on
part A, I
deputies.
like the part A staffing. Why can't we just go with that? But they already proposed in part A.
Yeah.
Staffing. And then,
Well, that's
know.
fine. To your point, Mr. Lambden, is if we get to the scorched earth option, then all bets are off. The council is just going to have to figure out, and then we will tell the sheriff at that time, what we need to do. We can't decide a number now, but at that time we could. So, but I think option A, I think is a reasonable public safety option, From what from my reading and just listening, it doesn't deal with all the cultural issues, but it just seems like as far as putting boots on the street, it's reasonable, and I feel good having that level, because I think that's more than what La Cañada has,
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there much that we need the committee to really do? Or are we at a point where we can just say?
Maybe the phase 2 could be handled by the council
Right,
directly.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
at this point, I think that they're only, you're right. I think Plan A, if we were to go that route, a lot of it, 90% of it seems to be there. I think the
Yeah.
missing piece is the events, and
And that maybe sets a good benchmark, and we can, if we get to the point where we have to make a decision to do it, then we'll tweak it at that time,
And also their community services, like their school education program, and they also said something
Yeah.
about, drug awareness and Red Ribbon Week. Some of those, if we scaled back on that, they have some sort of
Yeah.
youth activity league. If we scaled back on that a little bit, what would that savings be?
I just want to be sure we've captured everything, you know, so it's an real, you know, I just don't want surprises down the road
It
when
might
we
be more
actually.
efficient and less burdensome for the committee if we have staff, maybe based on the direction that we just gave, come back to us and say, you know, this is what we're gonna go to the sheriffs with a phase 2 directive.
Mhm.
Does this make sense? Does it not? What do we need to tweak?
Yeah.
The next meeting, and then go from there.
Yeah.
In terms of expediency and making this a little bit more efficient, staff could tell me that isn't the most efficient way. I really don't care either way. I'm not sure that the committee necessarily needs to meet again to talk about this, so.
What do you think, staff?
What does staff think?
Well, it's always, the most efficient way would be to work directly with the council. It's quicker. The council's the one ultimately going to make the decision.
Yeah, and we do need to get it started quickly because.
It's a 3 to 6 month, I just looked it up, it's 3 to 6
Yeah.
months to complete this next phase.
So we need to do that.
I wanted to ask if you have thoughts of how to calculate the special events.
Sure.
Okay. Because
That isn't, it's just a matter of creating the spreadsheet, how many, you know, working with the sheriff's department.
Okay.
This is the event, we know how many people attend the event, and
Yeah.
how many people do you think you need, and they work up the numbers.
you think it would be more? I mean, I'm just guessing it would be more than the 200,000 that was.
I don't
averaged
think
out.
it'll be more than 200,000. I'd be surprised if it's more than 200,000.
Okay.
Because they would still be using volunteers just like we do. If it was entirely paid sheriff staff, staffing all of the special events, probably would be more than 200. But, you know, that's almost the cost of an entire 24-hour, 365. That's about the cost of one whole deputy
Yeah.
every day, all year long. That's a lot of
Okay.
staffing hours.
You know, one more thing about this too is, I mean, I'm very sensitive to a comment that was made before about the morale of our police department and hashing this over a couple of years. And this is my hope, that by going to the phase 2 and putting it to the voters in 2 years, we're done. It's either we do this or quit talking about it. So I don't know how else to get there, because every time we keep dealing with budget problems, we get the 2010 report showed about $1 million potential savings there. You just can't ignore it. It's always in front of you. So I think it would be really helpful to really just put this to the voters and have them weigh in on it, you know.
One of the other things that Phase 2 gets you, they also do the evaluation of the current staff. They go through the extent of figuring out which ones
Yeah.
they could hire and which ones.
And that's confidential, though? Yeah.
No, I think who gets a job with the sheriff's department, that's public information.
Really?
So-
Probably a percentage of
But if you look, I was looking at what the Phase 2 entail, it includes the staffing assessments.
And I do want to point out that in the questions and answers, they said generally they've taken on 90% of the existing staff.
That's what they have said.
That's what they said, yeah.
Can we also expand on the proposal too there with the volunteers? Because we've heard a couple who said that they can go through the training with them, but they won't be stationed here in Sierra Madre, and I kind of have a little issue with that.
Well, I'm wondering about volunteers. If you're a volunteer, they can't make you go somewhere, can they?
Yeah. I don't recall that being said last night exactly that way, but there was a lot said last night, so, and it was late. But we will follow up and get a firm answer.
And can we start looking at maybe the fire EMTs or something?
Yeah, how do we do that? I mean, should that be another topic, agenda topic? I don't know that we're ready to.
It should be separate from this.
Yeah.
It's a different process, but it's something that,
I think we need a
We can start bringing
long-term plan for the
Right.
fire department, yeah.
For
So-
public safety. We need a long-term plan for public safety.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's something we can agendize sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what else do we need to do tonight?
well,
Madam City
we're not done with this item yet.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you that. You still need to give us direction on the draft ordinance that was attached, and whether or not that is sufficient, or you would like staff to modify it in any way.
What suggestions do you guys have?
I didn't have any.
I thought it was fine, too.
I found a typo.
Yeah, there's a couple of those.
And there was a question raised by a member of the public regarding the low income. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to open up public comment again just regarding this, because your first public comment was pertaining to the sheriff
Yeah.
proposal. at your
Okay,
discretion.
I'll do that. Mr. Gold, if you would like to comment on your proposal for the low cost or low income exemption, you're welcome to do
Is
so.
it a special Mr. Gold public comment?
Very Gold, I still live at 441 Ramona Ave. Okay, I do want to talk about the exemption. There are 5 categories you use: above moderate, moderate, low, very low, and extremely low. Currently, we exempt 3 of the 5 categories, which adds up to 1,778 households out of our 4,566 households. So we're exempting with those 3 categories 23%, almost a fourth of all of the households. Keeping in mind that many of those households have more than one voter, that's a lot of people who get to vote for us who have to pay the tax when they don't have to. And that just really, really bothers me. Although I understand the purpose of an exemption for this particular tax. We don't exempt people on property taxes or sales taxes, okay? But utilities are something you cannot live without, and those who are least able to even pay their utility bills, we're trying to be very kind and say, okay, we're not going to give you this extra burden. But if you look at the numbers, the income levels for the things, if you were to exempt the lower 2 categories out of the 5 instead of 3, then you would still be exempting 679 households, or 14% of all the households. And I think that would be a much fairer way to handle the situation. Thank you.
So you wanted, which one?
Do you want to just,
Exempt the people in the very low and the extremely low categories, which would total 679 households, or 14% of all the households. Only taking away those in the low category, which were now exempt, which is 399 households.
yep, got it. Thank you.
This is on the UUT discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, D. Alcorn on Grandview. Now, one of the things that's brought up is this is for public safety. And I think it was brought up that obviously the big discussion here is the police department. But it's brought up that the fire department is a major part of element, and we have a problem with that. And I think if that's not addressed as part of this, they really haven't completed a complete picture of what this is supposed to cover. So I think the legitimate to cover this, you have to cover public safety. Public safety includes the fire department. And if that's not included in there, and you don't understand what that problem is, what it's going to cost, it's indicated that that's going to cost more. So if you don't consider that, I think you haven't really covered public safety. So I think that item should be considered, what is going to be involved for the fire department. So I don't think that the job is completely done if you say, okay, we're just talking about what it's going to cost the police department. You have to consider public safety includes the fire department. And if you haven't done that, I don't think you've really covered the problem. So you have to consider that, how much is it really going to cost to do public safety? So I think maybe you're going to have a long-term study like that, but that has to be an element of what it's going to take to do public safety, including the fire department. Just talking about the police department is inadequate.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay. Any comments on changing the thresholds for exemption?
Do we know what was the thinking when those thresholds were set originally? Recall the conversation?
Way back when?
Way back when.
2008?
There wasn't much discussion. It was just, they wanted an exemption for low income, and there wasn't much discussion about whether it should be low or very low or extremely low.
I'm okay with Mr. Gold's suggestion of just eliminating the low and just allow the exemption for extremely low and very low. I agree with the concept that it's disturbing to me that you could vote for other people to pay your share of the tax. And, we don't even know of these 399 that are in the low? I mean, are they owners of $1 million property? Don't know. You know, I'm just not sure how far it's wise to go with this, but, you know, I'd be in favor of going along with that suggestion.
So the issue is fairness, right? It's not,
Yeah.
it's not the amount of revenue that we're losing.
It's not that much.
Yeah, and you know, I would be fine just keeping it the way it is, based on the committee. We discussed it a few times. The last time this is before the council, the household revenue figures were shockingly low, even for low, not extremely, and very low. And I'm okay allowing a family who makes, give or take, $60,000 a year with 2 to 3 people in the household. I forget exactly what the figures were, to get an exemption. And, you know, in terms of someone who's getting an exemption is able to vote for an increase in the tax, well, you come into that situation all the time. Parcel tax, renters get to vote on a parcel tax, and renters don't pay parcel taxes. So, you know, I don't think that's necessarily a reason why we should make the exemption more strenuous. I think that most of these folks, I said it before, are going to be seniors.
Yeah.
On a tight budget, so.
Okay, what do you guys think?
I agree with that. I'd rather just keep it where it's
Keep
at.
it the same? How about you two?
Well, I considered it last time we discussed it, and I said I would be willing to raise the threshold on that. Again, on concept, I can agree with that. I don't think it's a revenue issue. I think about this, but again, Councilmember Harabin, you make a good point too, with parcel taxes, other folks can vote on that, whether they're renters or homeowners. So, I don't feel so strongly about it one way or the other, but it was something that I had initially considered, to raise the threshold to very low, extremely low, so I can...
Well, it's not raising it. I mean, today it's extremely low, very low, and low, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe I'm saying it backwards, but lowering the threshold, is that the
Well-
correct? Well, let's just say this, including
You're okay with
low
keeping it the
income.
same?
I'm not feeling so strongly one way or the other, so
Okay.
I can
How about you, Councilmember Delmar?
go either way.
I look at it back and forth. I'm always thinking of those that they really can't afford it. But I also don't think we have a lot of people who take advantage of our exemptions.
No.
Correct.
Correct? So in that case, and following on sort of the logic behind this, I would be fine to go with extremely low and very low. I think the people that we are capturing right now are those folks.
Okay, so we've got 2 that are willing to go
So I'm
extremely
swing.
low and low. 2 that want to keep it the same, so you tell us just one will, yes or no, and we'll just move on.
I will stay, I can go with a very low and extremely low, keeping at they are the ones that can file for the exemptions.
So we're gonna move the threshold.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 3 of us. So we'll give you that direction. Okay.
There's an extra D after general fund.
She's gonna find all those.
3?
What other it's almost 10 o'clock. What other policy things do you need direction on here?
The agenda report mentioned whether or not the council wanted, but you have time to do this. We could bring it back, an advisory measure, this go-round or not. And then we just provided a quick update that committees have been formed to prepare the 6% budget and informational materials, and that's really it.
Okay. All right, so what else
Would
do we?
you like staff to put on a future item, something about an advisory measure or not?
Well, you still?
Yeah.
I thought about it a little bit more too.
Look, I mean, I'm not set either way. I just think that it might be a quick, I think it'd be a lot quicker than this discussion. I think it'd just
Yeah.
be something that we could discuss to think about whether it makes sense or not. Maybe it doesn't, but
Okay.
I don't really want to talk about it now. That's for
Okay.
sure.
I think it would be wise to bring it back.
Okay, we'll bring that back. Okay. All right, so we're still pretty solid on 10%, huh? Just keep that the same? Cool. All right,
Okay.
so that's it for, okay, we've got the corrosion control study, and this is a draft. I'm wondering if Director Inman can just give us a quick overall update on our water situation, and then the corrosion part of it we'll ask to bring back when we have a full. Would that be okay? Then, yes, with Dr. Barebow. Then the last two agenda items, are you guys okay with pushing those out?
Yeah, and I do have a list of questions for Dr. Barebow, but I've already given them to staff. I have about 20 questions, and the staff has answered a lot of them for me. I just wanted to note that.
Okay.
And we will get the remaining ones to Dr. Barebow.
I only have one comment on it, which is I just would ask her to make a solid recommendation
Okay?
And show up.
and show up. We'll be nice to her, tell her that. Well, I will be. I don't know about the rest of you. Okay, so go ahead and give us an update on where we're at with the...
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This corrosion study, as you know, is a work in progress. It's not complete, and it's frustrating for staff, and I'm sure for the council as well, to get the study in this form without any clear recommendations as to what to do with our water to clear the coloration from it. And I think one of the things that you're seeing here is that we're talking about a very difficult problem, a very complex problem to solve. And I think the study really illustrates how difficult this is to solve. And in speaking with Dr. B, since we've received the report, she's indicated clearly that there is no silver bullet that's going to solve the problem for us once and for all. I think it's clear in looking through the study that for each thing that we might do to resolve the coloration problem, there's going to be some other opposite effect that is going to cause us an issue somewhere else. So in talking with Dr. B, we have sent back a lengthy list of comments to her, and we would propose that we bring this item back to you on November 24th along with Dr. B. And we have specifically asked for an executive summary to this report so that you don't have to read through 69 pages of technical stuff to get to the point.
I went to the conclusion first, so.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think we probably all went to the conclusion first and found that there weren't any recommendations there. I'm asking for clarification on her apparently contradictory findings that you read throughout the report. And we're asking for two sets of specific recommendations. One for how we're going to treat the imported water if we continue to take it directly into our distribution system. That would be, I would say, condition A. Condition B, as you know, we have gotten approval from both the regional board and the water master to begin spreading the imported water. And I would ask Dr. B for a recommendation, a second recommendation, to come back with how should we treat the water that we are taking back out of the ground, or should we even treat the water that's coming back out of the ground? So I'll be looking for those two specific recommendations because those two seem to be the two options that the city is going to be faced with in the coming days. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or particularly take questions. Obviously, there's a lot of information in this report, a lot of data. Staff expected that in any event we would get a lot of questions from the council on this, and that's one of the reasons we brought it back to you in its incomplete form anyway, just so that we could field the questions and make sure that when we brought the final back to you, we had all those questions addressed. So we'd be happy to take the questions for you. I can answer as many as I can. Deputy Director Reynoso was here. He may have gone out to fix a leak. But he was here. He did take a phone call and he disappeared, so he may be out working on a leak. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can, and if not, we can certainly defer those to Dr. B when she comes.
Just a technical question on the water mains that we will be putting in when we do put in water mains. I recall in that report that she talked about how we shouldn't have unlined water mains, that the non-line mains, you have metal and potential corrosive issues with all kinds of different permutations of these things. So is that what we're planning at this point when we do our emergency water main replacement? Are we going to put in lined water mains?
What we have been putting in, for example, East Sierra Madre Boulevard, North Mountain Trail, it is all ductile iron pipe that is cement lined.
Yeah.
And that's what we would propose to put in. The second option that I'm working the design drawings to reflect is this lining of the existing pipe. But in either case, there's a lining, and we're not talking about bare steel or bare iron exposed to the water.
Would she have any technical opinion on the lining of these products that we're considering extruding inside of existing pipe?
She may. I haven't posed that question to her, but we can certainly do that. He's back. I think the leak must have been fixed.
That's all I have.
Okay, I don't have any questions myself. After I understood that she wasn't going to be here, I didn't read it with asking questions in mind, you know.
Just echoes what the mayor had asked for. It's exactly what I was going to ask for, just clear direction on what we should do going forward.
And a lot of my questions apparently you picked up on too. There was a lot of contradictory
Sure.
statements that she made, so those were a lot of what my questions were, as well as, you know, we still don't have a steady cause of what is causing the problems, and the amount of different chemistry that's been going through the pipes with all the different ejections, could that be attributing to it? You know, there's just still that lingering, you know, we started with the corrosion inhibitor at the beginning of when we started this, but we've gone, and you answered my question 6 times with different variations of that chemical, and could that have, you know, made it worse, to put it bluntly? And knowing that going forward, you know, how can we rectify that, especially if we're going to do this Betty bracing? But those were kind of my questions. It was the report, I was disappointed in it. I thought we would have had at least some direction to go to or some recommendations, but it's just a draft, and I appreciate Jose and Director Inman answering some of my questions.
Not regarding the report necessarily, but for the spreading basin and you know, the work that you want to do with spreading the water and the timing of November 24th, you know, is there a timeline we're working on backwards just to make sure once we get the approval and what the recommendations from Dr. Baribeau and how that works into the big picture and the timeline of when we'd like to test the spreading basin? Spreading the water, I should say.
We did get one proposal back from a geologist on what it would take and what it would cost to do a test on the spreading basins to start putting this water in the ground and see if after a period of time the ammonia portion of the water had been filtered out. And that cost was $80,000 to $100,000. And it would take several weeks, if not months, for that water to get down to that level. And one of the things that the Raymond Basin Management Board is going to be doing is they're looking at us spreading the water as a pilot program. They have already committed to drilling monitoring wells on the city's behalf, and they're doing some of this testing themselves. So I think it would be in our benefit to, rather than spending a lot of money right now to do that testing, let the board do it. We've got water experts from the regional board, from the engineer for the Raymond Basin have indicated that they do not have any concerns about us really harming water quality by putting this water in the ground. So
Spread it. Do it.
So I know it's not agendized for tonight, but we have we have committed to the council that we will bring it back for your approval before we start putting it in the ground. But pending that, Deputy Director Reynoso is already making preparations and getting those parts of our system that have been unused over the past 24 months, getting them ready to go so we can start operating the wells again.
Okay.
So how are our leaks doing? Are we seeing, is the number still increasing? Are you getting any sleep? I guess is my question.
Well, we had 4 today. I think we had 2 yesterday. I think we had 1 or 2 on Sunday. So the frequency has not gone down.
Where are the leaks?
Today we worked on Skyland.
Again?
Again. We worked on Laurel. Laurel was a new plastic service. It was on its 3rd leak on the plastic service. And the plastic services are once a plastic line has a clamp or it's been repaired and you distort the plastic, it changes the molecular chemistry of the plastic and it starts to leak more often. So as a policy, once we have more than 1 leak on a plastic line, we just run a new service. And that's what we had to do there. We developed a small leak on Michelinda and a small leak on Adams.
Okay, and just how we doing overall in our water conservation?
As of today, for the month, we're down around 10%. For the month, cumulatively, we're about 22 to 23% since June. So we're still well below the mark.
So our level, when you say down 10%, what does that mean?
No, we are down to a 10% conservation level.
Oh, our conservation level was 10%.
Yes.
Not good.
I have not heard back yet from the state with anything substantive since we sent our reply to them, other than the fact that they had received it and will consider it.
Just a question. You know, my feeling is I'll just say I didn't think we did enough when we addressed this. I'm not confident we're getting ourselves out of the woods with this. I mean, do we need to re-agendize this and look at it again? I mean, no, we're going backwards.
10% for the whole month, right up to the 27th.
Month to date, it's roughly 10%.
What could constitute? Why would we see such a dramatic drop?
It has been, it's been warm. It's been a trend since July that the conservation level has dropped. Overall, it's a weather thing, I'm sure. Being warmer this year than last.
Yeah, but I mean, August and September were hotter than October.
Yeah.
But the drop is from the previous year, October? How do you?
No, it's from 2013.
Yeah.
We're
So it
measuring
depends
from
on what the October was like
2013.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
And you'll recall at that time we had already started our conservation efforts. So we're
Right,
trying to be
right.
32% below
Right.
an effort that we were already into.
It's crazy.
All right, so we've got 1 more month's data. It looks really bad. Do we want to wait another month and see what that looks like? Or do we need to tee this up again?
So the measures that we just instituted last meeting, increasing the fines, we potentially talked about a flow restrictor, which we didn't come to an agreement on.
And we're going to go after the highest 30.
Right.
You're going to communicate
We
with
have,
them.
we have a number, we met to schedule them. Some of the things require resolutions, ordinances, those are all scheduled to come back to you really quickly, next meeting after, so that we can actually implement the things that council directed us to do at the last meeting.
So we can,
The
So there's-
decision to go after the top 30 abusers, does that require an ordinance?
No, we can start contacting them now,
Okay.
and we're already generating the list to do so.
Well, and look, the leaks get worse, and our conservation numbers get worse. I think that people have some real doubts as to what the cause is, whether it's them, whether it's our pipes. So, you know, and Mr. Gold came up with that one proposal. You know, maybe we should seriously think about trying to get a hold on just how much we're losing through the leaks.
well, okay, that.
You know, I'm not,
yeah.
you know.
I'll
that's-
tell you what, I'm in favor of agending agendizing that sooner rather than later, because I'm starting to think too, we ought to discuss whether we just want to go to monthly billing.
Yeah.
We have that scheduled for February currently. Given this, we have strategic plan items, we've got budget items, we've got getting the bids out to repair our water mains. So we have that item scheduled for February, which sounds far away, but really isn't.
And I have asked staff to provide to me the annual total water through our distribution system. Are you going to answer? Do you have that answer
And
for me?
that's why I was late, because I saw that on your list, so.
Because I know it's hard to do like the month by month and stuff, but if we did a year, if we did 2005, 2006, 2007, up until present, of all the amount of water that went through our distribution system and then subtracted. Why?
Because it's complicated, but because of when the billing is, there will be a month when water was used, but it's not recorded anywhere. Because of where the billing is, the every other month.
But I'm looking at a 12-month period.
No, there's another factor.
No, I think it will give us some idea if the water usage in the leaks is getting worse. It may not be exact, but it's going to give us some idea.
How much water was lost in Flushing all that time that went down the drain?
That's exactly what we need to find out. I just want to see where that wasted water is, even if it's not exact number. And you had a number for me.
I'll give it to you in acre feet. In 2012 was 2,787 acre feet.
Okay, I'm sorry, what is it?
2,787. 2013, 2,586. 2014, 2,000.
And what are you giving me?
Acre feet.
Of
Acre
what?
feet of production.
Of production. So I don't need to have all those now, if you can just put them in a little email for me. Do we have the amount of the metered usage?
The metered usage, no.
That's what becomes difficult, because we don't have that broken down into 12-month periods. There's no billing covering any specific 12-month period.
But you know how much you build in January, you know how much you build in February, you know how much you build in March.
What we billed in January included December.
Okay, and that will be
November.
captured in the year before.
Prior month, the prior year.
Okay, but that will be captured in the usage that we already have. If you could just give the total, and, maybe I'm completely wrong and it's going to look really bogus, but the amount of metered water in those years too. And then if we see a
can provide
big dip, I'm not talking gallons, I'm like, if we're seeing a really big dip, now, I think that would give us some evidence and, give us some leverage to the public to say, we really need to get this fixed, this parcel tax on the ballot.
We can provide it. We have looked at those figures in the past, and they're just all over the place. One year, it looks like we sold more water than we produced, and then the very next year, it's all over the place. But
One of our citizens took that information, because I saw it too,
Yeah.
took that to the district attorney and said, based on this data, we're cheating and of course, the district attorney just looked at it. And by the way, when I looked at that data, I came to the exact opposite conclusion that this person did, and I agree. It's just all over the map. Now, maybe you can do it, but I couldn't.
I'll be really honest with you, I can't do it.
Yeah.
My husband can do it, and so he's gonna look at it, and he has some formulas, and he has some variances, and whatever the crap he does, but.
we can provide the basic data.
So if
That
you could
is no
just
problem.
provide the basic data, and then he'll do his averages and, his whole calculus thing and stuff I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So are we okay to wait till February to tee this up again?
Yeah.
Okay.
We only have,
Well, there are other things coming back sooner.
Yeah.
I was just referring to the once a month
Yeah.
and the AMI and the once a month reading.
Yeah.
That's scheduled for February, but things like the
Bids for the RFP.
the water RFPs, there's other things.
Those are
that
probably the most urgent
Yeah.
things we need to look at.
Penalties for 3 times, exceeding your target 2 times, that's coming back right away. So things are coming back right away.
So we can tweak that at the next meeting then, when you bring the penalties back? Could we tweak that one more time if
Sure.
we need to? I'll just throw it out there,
We'll
because I'm
bring a
just.
draft resolution and the council can revise it however you'd
Yeah.
like to.
Okay, good, good. I just think that now you're gonna report back to the state 10%, and that's all we did, you know? So, okay.
That's really surprising.
I'm shocked.
Well,
I mean, that's
it is what it is. I mean,
crazy.
yeah,
So items 4, 5, and 6 will carry over to your next
Yeah.
meeting.
okay. Okay, motion to adjourn? On what?
Who's a receive and file?
Okay,
Public comment on the corrosion study.
all right.
I think she got you.
Hmm?
I think she got you.
I would appreciate if you could keep it
City
quickly.
council meeting, so I'm kind of confused as to what we're doing right now. I'll keep it at 3 minutes. Start the timing. All right.
If you could do even better, that would be much appreciated.
Good, but then I have to go back and talk about the UUT because that was kind of squeezed onto number 2 at the very bottom.
All right.
Quick question, good question. Thank you, because it would be nice to know. Some of us used to question, why don't we truck in gray water to keep down the dust control for all the building that was going on here in town, the Kensington and the new schools. So it might be fluctuations in how much water was used then. My question, in case I forget, I'll get back to it. Did we ever get an answer, I might have missed it, on the pipe on Grandview or Carter where it was an emergency meeting and we had to go and replace it? Was that through the chemicals? Are we still looking into what was the cause and who's paying for it? That was back about a month and a half ago, and it was a real big deal. Happened to be
Zinc
on the-
orthophosphate.
Was it
That
the
was a zinc
chemicals?
orthophosphate.
Thank you. And so we might not be responsible for the replacement cost? We are. God, okay. Will we be doing an environmental impact report, even though the county is going to do it for free, for the ammonia going into the ground at the settling basin? Because that's something that's going to be new to the settling basin. And if we don't have an environmental impact report, since they're going to be using us as a control guinea pig place to test this type of injection into the ground with the water system, then I'd probably say maybe we better not do Huck Finn Day because the fish are going to be floating to the top with the ammonia that might be coming from the ground. Thanks.
Okay. All right, motion to adjourn? Did we do that? Did we do that? So moved, okay, seconded? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.
This one